Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Marvel. The game I made invaded reality. Chapter 21. Stark searched for relevant information, and learned that the two vehicles, Superburn and Inclined Magic Treasure, both appeared in a game. Similarly, according to the keywords searched, the electromagnetic pulse launcher exhibited at the Midtown High School Science and Technology Fair and the atomic energy gun that only appeared once have prototypes in the game. Perhaps there will be some connection between the two. Therefore, he, who was not interested in the banquet at first, became interested when he heard that Merlin would also go. Put on more formal clothes. There are many important people in this banquet, and it is also very important for your future development. Merlin in overalls had just returned home when he was urged to get up by George, who had been waiting for a long time. Okay, but it's just an electromagnetic pulse launcher. It's not that big of a face, right? Before entering the door, he turned around and asked curiously. If we say that the atomic energy gun technology is perfect, it will be easy to say when the finished product is released. Of course you don't have that much face, because the crime rate in various areas has been high recently, and so many things have happened in Manhattan and Brooklyn. The impact of these two incidents on society is too great, and the mayor has no choice but to hold this banquet. But your electromagnetic pulse launcher is also a relatively important point. George explained it to him in general. Okay. Merlin shrugged and closed the door. After returning to the room, he didn't wear casual clothes or anything out of the ordinary, but put on a normal suit. If he wore casual clothes to attend the banquet, it would be George, his guardian, who would be embarrassed. And he is already a high school student now. If it is just a party among classmates and friends, of course there is no problem in wearing some casual clothes. But at this kind of formal banquet, wearing casual clothes is a sign of disrespect. After all, those who can accept this kind of banquet invitation will more or less prepare a formal suit at home. All right. George's eyes flashed with nostalgia as Merlin walked out of the room. I haven't seen you wearing this suit for a long time, but I didn't expect it to fit well. The body boom phase is over, and it didn't take long. This suit was custom made by the original father at the beginning of the year, and he would often wear it to various gatherings. Let's go. Pay attention at the banquet. George smiled and rubbed his head, then pushed him into the elevator. By the way, where's Gwen? Merlin asked casually after getting on the elevator. She went to band rehearsal. Like you, she rarely sees her recently. George said with emotion. Before I knew it, my daughter had grown up too. However, he himself is also busy. Because of the Lizardman matter, he is still in a state of desperation. If not for this banquet, he must still be in the police station and search Apple City with the police officers. The two chatted for a while along the way, and their relationship became much closer. Manhattan, Park Avenue, Waldorf Astoria. This hotel is the tallest hotel in the world. It has hosted several consecutive presidents and witnessed a lot of Eagle Country's history. We usually hold banquets, bringing together many congressmen and politicians. In the corridor, George introduced the situation of the hotel to Merlin. Soon, while chatting, the two of them came to a gate, and many people wearing luxurious dresses and suits entered one after another. George straightened his tie, then took out two invitations and walked over. The person in charge of guarding took it and took a look. After confirming that it was correct, he bent down slightly, smiled and stretched out his hand to signal the two of them to enter. After passing through the gate, Merlin's eyes lit up in the magnificent hall inside. Long tables were scattered in the hall. Under the bright lights, fashionable women and elegant men shuttled among them, and occasionally there was a chuckle like a wind chime somewhere. After a general glance, Merlin quickly settled on the group in the center of the hall. Stark, Obadiah, Hammer and the others stood together with glasses of wine, talking about something unknown. And not far from them, a burly, bald man in a white suit clinked glasses with a smiling middle-aged man with gray hair, wearing a suit, and a majestic look between his eyebrows. Jin Bing. Merlin was a little surprised. He didn't expect him to come to the banquet. But considering the identity of the other party, and the reason why the mayor held the banquet this time, he understood. Let's go there. George patted Merlin on the shoulder, then walked towards Jin Bin's position. Does Mr. Fisk have any opinion on the massacre in Hell's Kitchen? Mayor Christian asked with a slightly elongated voice as he sipped his red wine. Although Jin Bin is an entrepreneur and philanthropist on the surface, as the mayor, he must be clear about his details. It's just that both of them tacitly agree that as long as they don't touch the bottom line, they will not break this balance. Of course they deserved what they deserved, but as a cooperative policeman, they also deserved their death, and the only victim at this time became a dragon. None of this incident is worthy of celebration. Jin Bin shook his head and said with regret. But we have to trace the root cause. The root cause is that these three gangs ignored the law and took advantage of loopholes in the law to escape. The sword of Damocles hasn't fallen, so there is only the butcher's knife. Kristen said faintly, and there was already some beating in his words. As the most chaotic place in Apple City, Hell's Kitchen would only find Jin Bin no matter what happened. Hearing this, Jin Bing's expression remained the same. This can only show that the blade of the sword of Damocles is blunt, and there is no chilling light to shock people's hearts. Christian's expression was heavy, and he was about to speak when he saw George and George from the corner of his eye. "Hi, Mayor Christian, Mr. Fisk." George greeted the two with Merlin. "It seems that someone who can sharpen the blade is coming." Kristen raised his eyebrows, looked at Merlin and said meaningfully. And Jin Bing chuckled twice, and praised Merlin. "This should be the young genius who developed the miniature electromagnetic pulse launcher, Merlin Shaw. I heard that in order to relieve your pressure, he specially developed a weapon aimed at intercepting criminals. What an enviable family relationship. Since he has had contact with Merlin, he must have known Merlin before, so there is a lot of meaning in his words." "Ah ha ha, it's not that exaggerated." George laughed twice, his attitude a little cold. Jin didn't care about it, but looked at Merlin with interest. Many of the weapons in his hands recently were bought from the other party. During the conversation of several people, it also attracted the attention of Tony and others next to him. "You guys talk first, I have something to do." Seeing Merlin, Hammer stopped brazenly pestering Tony, and quickly walked in the direction of Merlin and the others. On the way, I took a glass of wine from the waiter, and then skillfully dropped some tips. After a set of movements like flowing water, I already held the wine glass enthusiastically and came to several people. "Hi, Mayor Christian, Mr. Fisk, Sheriff George, and our future scientist, Merlin." "Hello, Mr. Hammer." Merlin also responded politely. He had a pretty good impression of Hammer, and he belonged to a more interesting category of people. "How are you thinking recently?" "We, Hammer Industries, are definitely your best choice. We have the top team and resources, and your intelligence can only be brought into full play with me." Although it's funny and thick-skinned, sometimes it's a bit inappropriate to speak. This, you have to ask our Sergeant George." Merlin smiled with the corners of his mouth pulled up, and then tilted his head to gesture to George next to him. The elders are right next to him, and his approach is a bit over the top. There are many people in this city who have been deceived because of their dreams. I saw the miniature electromagnetic pulse launcher that Merlin exhibited at the Science and Technology exhibition. I think this weapon is very suitable for assembling in the police station. The eyes of Obadiah and others immediately focused on Merlin and George. "Oh, Mr. Stark." Looking at the middle-aged man with a mustache behind him, some dark circles and an arrogant look, he greeted in surprise. Although many parents in Eagle Country do not interfere too much with their children's choices, children are young after all, and some things still need to be taken care of by the elders. Merlin pretended to be careful and looked around, then leaned over and whispered, "It depends on luck, someone can invite you. I plan to equip every police force in Apple City with one, but for the order, you need to ask our protagonist." "Ah, no money. I'm a technical worker in the game. My research funds are all provided by the game. It's useless for me to ask for an invitation code." But some of the technologies contained in it piqued his interest. However, so far, the information displayed is too little, and it is impossible to determine the other party's purpose. And related to it, apart from the two yesterday, only Merlin in front of him. But the police can't do everything, they can only accept this kind of humiliation helplessly. Speaking of games, Merlin became excited. He is generally more tolerant of children. "Then what do you think of the game vehicles that appeared during the period? Did this game launch an offline mode? Someone provided players with weapons and vehicles." He stared at Merlin, trying to see something in the other's eyes. Stark did not interrupt and listened quietly for a while. After the other party stopped, He asked, "Do you know what happened in Brooklyn last night?" "Offline." Merlin scratched his head, thought for a moment and nodded. "Recently, the game has indeed launched an offline mode and has begun to recruit players." Merlin only plans to select a batch of players, and then follow the invitation code model, so that they can choose their own team. After everyone greeted each other for a while, Mayor Kristen also got down to business. Many of them are arms companies, but the police's project orders also have considerable benefits. Contracts can be used to keep promises, or they can be used as a weapon to limit talents. Hearing this, Merlin cut a piece of ham and put it on the plate and turned around. "Ah, I'm sorry, this kid's talent is so amazing, it makes me a little, impatient." Hammer seemed to know that he was a little anxious, and he quickly smiled apologetically at George. "Very good. The technology I developed for the electromagnetic pulse launcher and atomic energy gun was inspired by this. There are few games on the market that can compare with it." "No, I just downloaded it, and I haven't had time to play it yet." "How are you playing?" Tony looked at the child who was eating ham in front of him, but put away his arrogance and poisonous tongue. In the end, George was surrounded by Obadiah, Hammer and others, and after Merlin said that he listened to George, he broke away from them and went to find food. "Are you playing this game too?" Recently, the crime rate in the city has been increasing, and the traffic problems have become more and more serious. Many criminals even deliberately provoke the police and use their superb driving skills to walk the police like dogs. This is a humiliation. "No, thank you, my stomach needs more food," Merlin responded without looking back. "And you can earn a certain amount of prestige." After talking at length, Mayor Kristen looked at Merlin with a smile, and then got to the point. Although the number of orders for micro-electromagnetic pulse launchers is not much compared with those used in war, as a high-tech product, the unit price is not low. With the electromagnetic pulse transmitter, I believe this situation will be solved soon, which will make the work of the police more convenient. And when I was distressed, the Science and Technology exhibition at Midtown High School gave me a big surprise. It really does. Stark's eyes lit up, but he didn't expect it to happen. Then he asked, "Then how do I become a player?" "I have an invitation code in my hand, do you want it? And I invite everyone to come this time, one of the things is this thing. Son, do you want some juice?" Just as Merlin was walking around the dining table looking for his favorite food, a figure suddenly approached. Especially the diversified gameplay and freedom in the game, as well as the thought-provoking storyline. "How much is it?" Not long after Hammer joined the conversation, Tony and others also joined in one after another. "Of course. Then do you like to play games? I think you must be playing the game of morality and the rule of law. I have seen your miniature electromagnetic pulse gun and atomic energy gun, which are almost exactly the same as those in the game." He speculates that this may be an existence similar to an Onion website. With Sergeant George around, he doesn't have to worry too much about these things, he just needs to make a statement. With the increase of a little intelligence, the consumption in his body also accelerated, and with the absorption of too much knowledge, his stomach had already started to grumble. This is the approximate conclusion he came to after collecting data for a day today, but it is still uncertain. I set a series of numbers, you just memorize it. RG003. With your identity information, you can enter this string of numbers in the initial section of any computer. Technical jobs. Stark memorized the string of numbers easily, and was a little surprised by what Merlin just said. For a big money like Tony Stark, being able to join the game is of course the best thing. The opponent not only has money and technology, but also has many plot tasks on him, which can greatly enrich the gameplay. Otherwise, you would get tired of robberies or gang fights every day. In the future, we will definitely cooperate with organizations such as Hydra, SHIELD, The Hand, and the Intelligence Agency to enrich the game plot. Technical personnel. It means that they specialize in scientific research, and after the research results come out, they will be sold to the game platform. Generally do not participate in the game to perform tasks to make money. Of course, if there is any need, you can also post tasks on it. Merlin roughly explained it to him. I didn't expect it to be a huge trading platform. Stark was a little surprised, but he quickly realized that if there were no amount transactions, no one would become a platform player. But it can also be seen from this that the energy possessed by the people behind this game platform. Little dumb, put through the call. 1,000 million, I can make a profit by selling 1 or 2 vigilantes. In the following time, Merlin has been laying out the game platform, and most of the time is spent buying and building car repair shops, modification shops, weapon shops, bunkers, etc. And dealing with some areas with relatively backward weapon technology can also produce miraculous effects. The Little Dumb is the Rockstar artificial intelligence system. Remember not to say anything after you get the money. On the surface, the money is still with me. George didn't know Merlin's inner state, but warned him seriously. After the construction is completed, the R-Star subsystem will be settled in to create a fully automatic intelligent production line to produce weapons and vehicles. Okay, I get it. Soon, George finally negotiated a plan, and the signed company finally chose Stark Industries. You go home as soon as possible now. Merlin. Of course, this is also due to the fact that the network signal of the subsystem will not be traced. Although he and Jin hadn't met each other, they had a deep relationship of interests. Hello, are you listening? Seeing that Merlin didn't respond, Gwen's tone became more and more anxious. So did Peter. You are welcome to be a guest at home in the future, and you can come to me if you need anything. This is my business card. After Jin Bing stuffed a business card to Merlin with a kind face, he nodded and greeted George, who had a dark complexion, and left the banquet hall. As for Hammer Industries and Osborne Industries, there is not much to say about the reputation of one, and the other focuses on biotechnology. In comparison, Stark Industries, which is still a leading defense company, is much more reliable. I'm here on 6th Street, what's wrong? Merlin frowned slightly when he heard Gwen's anxious voice, and subconsciously slowed down a little. After the basic production chain and industrial chain of Hell's Kitchen are stabilized, Merlin is also ready to open a server to recruit players for expansion. At the same time, herbal medicine sales and smuggling business routes are gradually reopening. That's good, 1,000 million US dollars, I will call you after the contract is drawn up. As for the joining of the two, it was straightforward. Bullseye was purely interested, and Daredevil Matt heard that he could make a lot of money to buy vigilantes, so he agreed very simply. This point is mainly discussed by the police chiefs from many regions. Listen, you are in danger now. The lizard monster that appeared at the Science and Technology exhibition last time is looking for you. I am serious, and with less contact, they are much safer. Obadiah felt that the miniature electromagnetic pulsar should have a good effect when used as an individual combat weapon. Yes, sir. Merlin, where are you now? It's too late, he's already over. The basic rules of the contract are set, that is, 1,000 million US dollars to buy a 3-year technical patent, and after completing the police order, sell freedom. At the same time, Bullseye, Daredevil and others have also become players one after another, and the Punisher who has gradually become famous. During this period, the troubles encountered by the Hell's Kitchen industry have also been solved by them, and by the way, they have also expanded the platform. The industry has developed smoothly. As Merlin talked with Stark, he unknowingly talked about technologies related to atomic fusion. It was getting late, and after Mayor Kristen's final speech, the banquet was declared over. Look and see heroes, they glow. At this moment, a ringtone suddenly rang in Merlin's headset. Friday, Queens. Well, the muffled sound of locomotives resounded on the street, occasionally attracting the envious eyes of some teenagers. In the following conversation, Stark asked Merlin many times to learn about the game, but it seemed that the game platform had just been built recently and there was basically not much useful information. The phone was connected, and soon there was an anxious voice in the headset. After the matter of the miniature electromagnetic pulse weapon is settled, the next step is to talk about how to reduce the crime rate in Apple City. If you contact him, you will be easily used. Although he didn't meet the new boss, he could only accept tasks online, but as long as he could make money, his subordinates didn't care too much. After Merlin drove Hannah home on a motorcycle, he was rushing home at this time, but Gwen seemed very busy recently, and the two of them didn't have much time to see each other, and they didn't even come to class today. If you recruit players too early, although there is money, but the basics have not kept up, and the weapons and vehicles with game characteristics cannot keep up, the game platform will not be able to continue to develop. Merlin began to develop steadily. Because of the appearance of the Punisher, Hell's Kitchen has been more stable recently than before. The apartments, villas, nightclubs and other industries in Hell's Kitchen are also being accommodated. Try not to deal with him. Entrepreneurs and philanthropists are just his appearance. He is very dangerous. Seeing Merlin take the business card, George did not grab it and throw it away, but persuaded him. After all, the Punisher really killed you, and if he said to kill you, he would kill you. Merlin stared at the figure in front of him, his expression froze. Bang! Suddenly, there was a sound in front of him. Without any warning, on the driveway in front of the locomotive, a sewer manhole cover suddenly soared into the sky, and then a green monster's giant claw grabbed the edge, and a huge and hideous lizardman jumped out of it, blocking the front of the locomotive. Merlin was not overly flustered when he saw this, but immediately turned around, wanting to turn around. But Merlin, who had just turned the motorcycle sideways, suddenly swears, and then he didn't care about anything, propped up the fuel tank with both hands and made a wolf jumping like a goat. Bang! A thick manhole cover roared past like a shell, and the motorcycle under Merlin fell apart on the spot. Merlin fell to the ground and rolled in a circle, then squatted on the ground, looked back at the Ducati that had become a pile of fragments, and there was a flash of pain in his eyes. My favorite car. Melon Shaw. Follow me obediently, I won't hurt you. A hoarse and low voice sounded from the lizardman's mouth, and while speaking, he walked towards him slowly with heavy steps. Merlin stood up and turned around, sighing helplessly. Can't you wait a little longer? I'm not ready yet. Peter, whose head was gradually going crazy, froze for a moment when he heard the words, what do you mean? Peter, I know it's you, and I know why you are looking for me, but now is not the time. Peter was startled, and his cold vertical pupils suddenly shrank. You've always known about this. He subconsciously took a step back and asked in shock. I guessed it from the experimental data you sent me. Merlin on the opposite side took out a heavy-duty revolver again at some point, and pointed 2 guns at him. Bang! Peter's huge body drew an arc in the air, and then fell on the street in all directions. Using both hands and feet, Peter began to crawl on the ground like a giant lizard, his flexibility greatly increased. But soon, the influence of the genes in his body made him forget about this matter. His will became firm again. He took a step forward, his burly body pressed forward, and looked down at Merlin. Peter couldn't help but be stunned for a moment when he looked at the broken palm, but the broken place quickly grew out at a speed visible to the naked eye. He can't stand one gun, and he will definitely be ruined if 2 guns are used together. Looking at the dark muzzle of the heavy revolver in the opponent's hand, a sense of crisis suddenly rose in his heart. Therefore, after Peter appeared, and he also appeared in the central area of the Queen, he quickly reacted. Boom, boom, boom. It's useless. It's just a toy gun to me. A trace of ridicule flashed in Peter's eyes. He had seen the power of this gun once at the previous technology exhibition, and it couldn't stop him at that time, let alone now he has been greatly evolved. You're lucky. Merlin grinned when he saw this. The revolver is powerful, and it won't jam at any time, but correspondingly, the recoil is too strong, and the shooting accuracy is also reduced. Peter looked down at Merlin in front of him, who still had a harmless look on his face. Anyone who saw him would subconsciously think that he was a naive high school student. Then you should know what I want. Come join us. We will become the first batch of human beings to evolve. Thousands of years have passed, and human beings still stay where they are. Human beings' fragile bodies need an evolution. Peter, who was about to touch Merlin, flew upside down like a cannonball. Compared with lizardmen, he still prefers individual armor and mechs. The next moment, the water valve in Peter's hand burst together with his palm. Merlin pulled the trigger, and a huge recoil came from his hand. Buzz! The atomic energy exploded instantly in the air, causing a brilliant arc to explode. You are really disgusting, so don't touch me. Merlin complained in disgust, and then took out the atomic energy gun from his waist. It's up to you. Peter seemed to have expected it a long time ago, so he wasn't too angry. He believed that as long as the other party injected the regeneration potion, he would definitely change his mind. The sound of the siren was getting closer and closer, and he already had the idea of retreating. Peter held the water valve in a throwing gesture, but the next moment, a deafening sound suddenly sounded. Boom, But at this moment, a strange feeling surged out of his heart involuntarily. But as the dark gunpowder smoke dissipated, there was nothing under the big net, and the loneliness was netted. As he spoke, his giant claws grabbed at Merlin. The police are coming. Because during this period of time, the police in Manhattan are only looking for traces of the lizardmen, and they are patrolling every day. Come and taste my newly developed big baby. Even that special incendiary bullet he can resist. Shoo shoo shoo. But at this moment, a series of black arrows suddenly roared from a distance and shot at him. It seems that all his directions are in the invisible cobweb woven by the other party. Diddy. The alloy arrow flashed red, and the next moment his huge body was enveloped by balls of fireballs. Roar, Merlin. Peter roared angrily and grabbed the fire-water valve next to him. Don't talk about martial arts. Merlin adjusted the muzzle of the gun downward and pulled the trigger again. It's not a half-finished product this time. Merlin tilted his head and pulled the trigger. The appearance of the siren made Peter's mood instantly become agitated. When the flames gradually dissipated, an arrow roared again, blasting a large net in midair, enveloping it in Peter's direction. Ah, I don't want to be like you, it's kind of ugly. Merlin looked at Peter's ferocious lizard face and green horny skin, and the corners of his eyes twitched. Bang! The bullet whizzed past, but this time it missed. How many guns does this guy have? In the game, it is also 2 shots for 1 person. Hiss! Scarlet letters spit out from his mouth, crawled on the ground, moved his body and meandered forward. His cold vertical pupils kept staring at Merlin, and kept approaching. In fact, I knew it from the beginning. Puff! The red water valve broke instantly, and the water in the pipe gushed out under tremendous pressure. Not to mention the upgraded Mk2 heavy revolver. Woo! At this moment, a burst of dense sirens came from afar, getting closer. Mk2 heavy revolver. The fuselage is different from ordinary pistols, full of metal texture. The sirens were getting closer. Peter didn't care to be surprised. His legs exploded, and he rushed towards Merlin again. But the next moment, as if he saw something, his body suddenly froze. After repelling Peter, Merlin did not continue to use the atomic gun, but took out a new heavy revolver. HMPH. Peter stood up, shook his drowsy head, and then looked at Merlin opposite. Only now he is the most perfect body. From now on, human beings will not be troubled by diseases and the pain of severed limbs. Peter whispered frantically with his arms open. Bang! Peter's right foot exploded on the spot, and as he stepped on the air, he staggered and fell to the ground, gliding forward for a certain distance. And Peter, who was shrouded in flames, had disappeared in place at some point. Good guy, are you playing with the rules with me? Generally, when monsters are enveloped by explosions, they mostly escape. While speaking, Merlin turned the 2 revolvers at his fingertips like a cowboy, smoothly put them into the holster around his waist, and then looked at the person who suddenly entered the battlefield. As the rope descended, a man wearing a black robe, a hood, and a quiver came in front of Merlin. Women's Federation ADC, Hawkeye. Son, are you all right? Clinton walked quickly to Merlin and asked with concern. As soon as Clinton arrived at the scene, he saw the lizard man running towards a high school student. Without thinking about it, he subconsciously tapped the string and shot. Although it is a pity that the lizard man was not caught in the end, it is also comforting to be able to rescue him. I'm fine, thank you. Merlin smiled, but didn't explain too much. Clinton's eyes froze for a moment on the revolver at his waist, then turned to his face. Melon Shaw. The other party's identity immediately appeared in his mind. Of course, the recent turmoil in Apple City also attracted the attention of S.H.I.E.L.D. Fury sent him and Natasha. He is in charge of tracking down the lizardmen, while Natasha is in charge of Hell's Kitchen Punisher and Plague Mysterio. We are special forces that specialize in dealing with strange events. As for more, I can't disclose. Clint took out the ID card of S.H.I.E.L.D. and handed it over. Rows of brand new locomotives and motorcycles are lined up in the store, and the beautiful bodies reflect the attractive metal texture under the projection of light. At first glance, it looks more like a scrap car. Clinton was about to open his mouth to get in touch with him, but the sound of sirens was approaching, and police cars quickly surrounded the scene. Merlin. Buzz. The roar of the accelerator reverberated in the store, and a burly, bearded middle-aged man was sitting on a black Harley 883 for a test drive. After Fury asked them to meet, they can make routines and invitations depending on the situation. Clint retracted his credentials and responded, "Can it really start?" Looking at the rusty locomotive in front of him, which seemed to be falling apart in the next moment, Merlin expressed doubts. Of course, Merlin, a talented high school student who has emerged recently, has also entered their sights. Through investigation, it seems that he has some connection with the Punisher in Hell's Kitchen. Da. The moment the ignition was turned on, there was a tractor-like sound from the locomotive engine. It was smashed into pieces by a monster with a manhole cover, so it can't be put back together as building blocks. Merlin said helplessly. Honda, Yamaha, BMW, Augusta, Harley-Davidson, the variety of cars is overwhelming. Merlin. George got out of the car anxiously. After learning that Merlin was also at the scene and was being watched by the lizard man, he was quite frightened. Well, but you don't need a brand new one, I'm going to buy it back and modify it. Well, if you need anything, you can come to us. George didn't ask too much, but pulled Merlin over. Monster, lizard man, it's for modification. Jack pondered for a moment, then suddenly thought of something, and clapped his hands. Merlin came a bit early, and there was still no one in the store, so the bearded man who was testing the car quickly saw him. He brought Merlin to the door. In an inconspicuous place, a dilapidated and almost out of the ordinary locomotive was placed there. Organizations such as the Mystery Section of the Special Zone and Phobal often use threats and lures to select suitable criminals to cooperate with. No, it's business as usual. Merlin looked at the bearded man excitedly approaching him and was speechless. I'm here to buy a car, not to tell a story. Domestic strategy, what do you do? George frowned upon hearing the lengthy name, and just said something before directly asking the key point. After making sure that Merlin was fine, he looked at the mysteriously dressed Clint beside him. Who are you? He frowned. Judging from the temperament of the other party, he was probably a secret agent. Merlin in casual attire got out of the car, looked up at the name engraved on the plaque, and walked into the store. Such an affordable and efficient method is commonplace in Eagle Country. Merlin thought that it would be dangerous to ride a motorcycle every day, so he thought about buying another dilapidated motorcycle and changing it into a Tyrant Mk2, which is dual purpose for flying and land, and equipped with deadlock missiles. Tell me about what it's like to be up close to a lizardman. He knew that Merlin was also engaged in modification, and generally as long as it was not too serious, it could be repaired. As soon as he entered, his eyes lit up. And on the roof of the building not far away, a black and white figure also quietly retreated. Don't worry about this, you can talk about it while choosing. Jack said indifferently. Come with me. I don't know who lost a Ducati 916 in my shop recently. There is almost no benefit except that the engine can start. The next day, Silent Sun's Club. George flicked between the ID and Clint's face, making sure it was correct before returning it to him. What car are you going to buy this time? Is it a Ducati? You boy, don't run around now. He put his arms around Merlin's neck and pulled her back into the car. Correct. Looking at the entrance of the sewer beside him, he frowned slightly, and climbed down anyway. Although what the Punisher and the mysterious man did in Apple City had a great impact, but based on the conclusion of the SHIELD investigation, they feel that these people are talents, and it would be better to cooperate or recruit them. Is there anything we can do for you? Generally, Merlin would buy accessories from them when modifying motorcycles, and because of his age, Jacques was still very familiar with him. Are you here to buy accessories? Jack recognized Merlin and asked as usual. In this way, you can deal with emergencies well in the future. I'm going to disassemble it in a few days. Buy a motorcycle. Why, what happened to your Ducati? Hearing that he came to buy a car, Jack was a little puzzled. Of course, I'll start it for you. Jack turned the key directly. Buzz. But soon, the crisp clicking sound disappeared, and the engine gradually became smoother. No, I'm here to buy a motorcycle. Merlin shook his head, then walked to the Ducati area to look. Oh, my God, that person on 6th Avenue yesterday was you. I said why the car looks so familiar. Jake, who had reacted, exclaimed, and didn't even try the car. Clint opened his mouth as he watched Merlin being taken away and reprimanded, but after thinking about it, the matter of the lizard man was the most important thing. People from Phobol. I'm Clint Francis Patton, a member of the Homeland Strategic Defense Offensive and Logistics Agency. And he can feel that this kid really likes motorcycles, but unfortunately he doesn't like the tough guy style. It really works. Merlin was a little surprised. Later, he checked it carefully and found that the powertrain was fine, but the frame always gave people a feeling that it was about to fall apart. Just this one, how much is it? For some reason, when Merlin said he wanted to buy it, the front of Ducati suddenly moved slightly. Both Merlin were negotiating the price, but they didn't care. No, I don't need your money. Since you plan to modify it yourself, you must buy a lot of accessories from me. This one will be a gift. Anyway, he didn't know who threw the car over, and he planned to scrap it. Since Merlin wanted it, he was too embarrassed to take any more money. After all, the accessories that the other party bought from him already made a lot of profit. And this time, if the locomotive is to be greatly modified, it will almost cost half the price of the locomotive. Well, it's still the same place. After I finish the inspection, I will send you the accessories list. Merlin nodded and left the Silent Sun Club. Wait a minute, you haven't said anything about the lizard man yesterday. Jack stretched out his hand, and seeing Merlin's disappearing back, he could only return to the shop regretfully. The platform over Hell's Kitchen is gradually getting back on track, and it's been a busy time recently. After yesterday's failure, Peter and Professor Connors will definitely speed up their plans, and they will also need to follow up quickly. Try to recruit some players before Peter and the others start their plan, and find a way to stay in Apple City. To organize a large-scale mission. After returning to the modification shop, Merlin retrieved the technical information and drawings of the Tyrant Mk2. At the same time, he also drew the structure of the Ducati 916 and began to adjust the modification plan. Look and see Hiraes, they glow. Just when he was specifying the modification plan, the phone's ringtone suddenly rang. When he saw the caller, Merlin suddenly showed a headache expression. The ringing kept ringing, and it seemed that it would not stop as long as he didn't answer. Helpless, he could only press the on button. Merlin, you ran to your modification shop again, didn't you? I told you yesterday that you should try not to go out until the lizard man is caught. As soon as the call was connected, there was a loud roar from the other side. Merlin gasped, and quickly moved the phone away from his ear. After George's tone on the opposite side gradually calmed down, he put the phone to his ear again. You know, my bike was smashed to pieces yesterday. The bike is my soul. I can't live without them. So, I just came out today to buy a motorcycle. He explained in a serious tone. What car do you want? I can buy it for you. You don't have to run out. Forget it, let's not bother you anymore, I'm sure you don't have time. Merlin said firmly. George, well, he really didn't have time. Go home as soon as possible today. I don't know how that lizard man targeted you, but you are in a very dangerous situation now. Try not to stay outside, and keep communicating with your mobile phone at all times. George knew that motorcycles were very important to the child, and in the end he just gave a few worried words. Let's see again. Merlin quickly hung up the phone after finishing speaking. With any luck, he might stay up all night tonight. George in the police station sighed helplessly as he looked at the disconnected communication in his hand, and the door of the office was suddenly opened. Sheriff George, there is news about Spider-Man and Lizardman. Go. George immediately stood up and followed. After the modification plan was completed, Merlin sent the parts list. Not long after it was sent, Jake sent the car and accessories together. After unloading all the locomotive and accessories from the pickup truck into the workshop, Merlin stood beside the Ducati locomotive, pinched his chin and thought for a while, then walked to the locomotive and wiped the dirt on the surface with his fingers. I don't know how long it has been abandoned. The shell and many parts of the car have become rusty, and many parts are missing. Looking at the dirt wiped off by his fingers, he clapped his hands. Go. He first picked up the water gun and wet it against the integration, and then foamed it up and started rinsing. After washing it several times with a high-pressure water gun, although the locomotive still looks dilapidated, the surface looks much cleaner and fresher. And there are some pink paint bases exposed between the black and red rust. After rinsing, Merlin began to disassemble, and then polished every part carefully. This is a project that will test patience, but Merlin enjoys the process of gradually brand new parts in his hands. Time came to night unknowingly, and after Merlin cleaned and polished it over and over again, and replaced and installed many electrical parts, after the final red and white spray paint was completed, the Ducati that was originally in tatters and about to be scrapped was left on the workstation. Gone, replaced by a brand new Ducati 916 painted in red and white. The bright paint base reflects the luster under the light, showing the beautiful arc of the car body, and the worn-out tires are also replaced with matte black silk, like a hot beauty lying on the ground with her butt up. Hot beauty. Merlin scratched his head. How could he feel this way? Could it be that he has been single for too long? He shook his head, and checked around the locomotive. As long as there were no problems, he planned to modify the atomic engine and deadlock missiles for it. Fortunately, when Jin Bing bought weapons a few days ago, he gave rare raw materials for the atomic energy industry such as plutonium elements, so he didn't have to worry about the production of atomic energy engines. At this moment, Merlin seemed to have noticed something, stopped in front of the car, then squatted down, and looked at the two protruding headlights. There is some red paint on it, which probably drifted on accidentally when it was just spray painted. Although protection is done before painting, usually after removing the protection, there will be some inexplicable paint spots. Merlin picked up the rag and tried to wipe it twice. After finding it was useless, he sprayed some pine perfume and wiped it carefully again. Bobobo. The surface of the rag and the headlight made a sound of slipping under the rubbing of pine perfume. After wiping hard twice, Merlin moved the rag away. But when he saw the headlights, he froze for a moment. What the hell? There was a blush on the headlights, as if diluted red paint had dispersed. But it's just a little bit of red paint, how could it spread so much? He was a little confused, and tried to wipe it with a rag again. After finding it was useless, he wiped it with his hands. His finger slid down the wet and smooth headlight, and Merlin looked at his finger, but found that there was no red paint stain. He tried rubbing it on the headlight again to see if he could get a little off. Buzz, buzz. However, just as he was about to take it back to check his fingertips after rubbing, the engine of the locomotive suddenly roared, and the body and exhaust pipes also trembled. Merlin, is it on fire? Thinking that it might be a problem with the ignition relay or wiring in the car, he stood up, temporarily put aside the problem with the lights, and prepared to check it. However, as he got up and his fingers left the headlights, the auto-starting engine gradually stopped, and finally calmed down. Merlin didn't pay too much attention to it, but turned on the position of the relay and checked it. After confirming that there was no problem with the relay, he went to the line. But after looking around, there is still no problem, everything is normal. Merlin looked around again in disbelief, and found that there was still no problem. Hiss, what's going on? After searching to no avail, Merlin stood aside, biting his thumb, and looked at the locomotive in front of him in confusion. In the beginner stage, the current situation often happened to him, but as he became more proficient, he knew almost every component of the motorcycle, and if there was a problem, he could quickly find the problem point. But the locomotive in front of me is too weird. There is no automatic ignition of any sign, but there are no problems with the ignition circuit. After thinking about it, he dismantled the electronic control unit, replaced it with a new one and tried it. After confirming that there was no problem, he went back to the headlight to clean the paint. It seems to be a little less. Seeing the blush on the headlights, Merlin scratched his head, feeling a little weird. He knelt down and rubbed his fingers over it, trying to clean it up. Moreover, the technological level of human beings on Earth is backward, so there is no need to worry too much about their own safety. Buzz buzz. The dull sound seemed to break through the roof at this moment, and the car body shook more and more violently. Buzz. Many Autobots quickly turned into vehicles and disappeared into the abandoned factory. Autobots, gather. A unique frequency signal spread throughout Apple City. Under the dark night, many vehicles parked in the garage started their ignitions automatically, turned on their headlights, and started driving towards the designated location. Optimus Prime could only helplessly shake his head at this. The arrival of the Decepticons made him feel more and more urgent, but he also knew that this kind of urgency was useless. Merlin frowned, but for some reason, some excitement suddenly rose in his heart. He also put his other hand up and started rubbing the two headlights with both hands. In the surrounding area, there are still a series of closed glass pipes, and all kinds of rare elemental materials are stored inside. Teepee and Chingcho also helplessly spread their hands. However, as soon as his fingers touched it, the blush on the headlight spread rapidly, like a shy girl's flush. Buzz. The throttle was boomed, and the car body trembled more violently. The whole workshop was filled with the loud sound of the locomotive. He rubbed it again uncertainly. From the trembling exhaust port, a piece of viscous engine oil suddenly sprayed out, and the whole locomotive seemed to be released suddenly. It stopped roaring and trembling, and the engine gradually turned off. In the end, after the gathering ended, RC still didn't come, and there is no useful information, so they can only return to their own places temporarily. Bumblebee scratched his head and looked out at the moon through the concrete pillar. As the earliest scout to arrive on Earth, he was still an old Chevrolet in the second-hand market. They are hidden in human society just like us. You should be more careful in the future. Have you all collected any useful information? After reminding his companions, Optimus Prime began to consolidate the information. Humming. The locomotive that replaced the electronic control unit roared again, the engine suddenly started, and the whole body began to tremble. Or is it because the improvement of intelligence has also improved the mechanical affinity? That's why I have such a weird feeling. After leaving such a sentence, Optimus Prime announced his dissolution. It's not right, it's not right. What fact? It's not really what Gwen said, is it? At this time, RC was undergoing transformation. Recently, I got news that members of the Decepticons have also come to the Earth, and Megatron, who fell into the glacier, has also been awakened. We must speed up the progress and find the location of the fire source as soon as possible. The silver-white mechanical arm is constantly dancing for welding, transportation, screwing, spraying. As the shutter door slowly opened, a vast intelligent assembly line workshop appeared in front of him. PFF'd. Crack, crack. There was a crisp and dense metal sound, and vehicles rose from the ground, quickly transforming into tall humanoid machines. He thought for a while and then went to find other cars to try. Accompanied by engine roars and exhaust sounds, bright lights illuminated the dark abandoned factory, and trolleys drove in one after another. Merlin came to the backyard and walked to the door of a workshop. Go back to RC and tell her the news so that she can be more vigilant. The locomotive in front of him is like a living body at this moment. Hearing this, the Autobots present immediately became serious. Decepticons, Megatron. Merlin looked at the palm of his hand that touched the headlight, and then at the vibrating engine, as if he had noticed something. In any case, as long as it is well hidden, there is generally no problem. Merlin quickly backed away in horror, looking at the oil dripping from the exhaust pipe of the motorcycle, and then at his hands, with a shocked expression on his face. My mind is full of oil and gears, something is bound to go wrong. Why isn't RC here? Under the cover of night, they turned into phantoms and raced on the road, and finally gathered in a hidden abandoned factory in Brooklyn. And the leader, Optimus Prime, who was tall, had flame tattoos, and exuded majesty, looked around and suddenly found that there was one person missing. Although I was obsessed with motorcycles before, I have never felt the way I do today. However, the next sentence of the leader Optimus Prime made him serious in an instant. Locomotive, locomotive, let's go with your locomotive. Chevrolet Camaro, GMC, ambulance Hummer H2, built heavy-duty truck. She only has 2 wheels, so she won't be too fast, and there are problems with many parts of her body, so I don't know if she can come here. Ironhide leaned on a pillar and said indifferently. Something's wrong, something's wrong. Merlin kept circling the motorcycle, trying to find out what was wrong. At the end, vehicles such as the armored skeleton horse, Santoro, and Zybanu were built. Because the workshop is not very big, Merlin did not write too many programs, only a few vehicle modules that sold well. As for Scram, Vigilante, etc., because the materials needed for the engine are more precious and scarce, there is generally a special line for the production of the engine. Merlin pulled up a recently produced atomic engine with a trailer, left the workshop, and returned to his workstation. Looking at the brand new motorcycle in front of him, Merlin pondered for a while. He just tried touching the headlights of other vehicles, and there were no problems, and there was no subtle feeling. When he came back and tried to touch the Ducati motorcycle in front of him, the roar of the engine and the fuel injection of the exhaust pipe disappeared. I don't know if he entered the sage mode after releasing it. After shaking his head to get rid of the weird thoughts in his mind, he pulled the atomic engine over. He called Jacques and other car repair shops and described it, but none of them had heard of the situation that touching the car light would make the engine start. However, if you encounter this kind of unclear problem, if you replace all the problem areas, there will probably be no problem. Therefore, although the cause has not yet been found, the root cause is probably in the engine. The engine just needs to be modified, so replacing the engine should be fine. Also replace the light bulbs and wiring. Sure enough, I will gradually become a replacement worker. Several smart production lines have been completed and can be supplied to these stores. Merlin put away his gloves and looked at the Ducati motorcycle in front of him with satisfaction. Wait for me, I'll be home soon. It wasn't long before Natasha arrived in Hell's Kitchen, and she was recommended here after contacting Frank the Punisher. In addition, after changing to an atomic engine, many parts were removed, and Merlin also installed a Vulcan Gatling under the cabin. And not long after Merlin left, beautiful woman with curly brown hair came to Merlin's modification shop. She also tried to hack into it, but even giving it to Chief Fury and having all the technicians on the field didn't work at all. Merlin, where are you now? Gwen's voice came from the phone. Me, I'm still in the store. Could it be that lizard man came to see me again? Merlin rubbed his hair and walked down the stairs, and then came to the sink. But she didn't expect that after this human replaced her with a new powered heart, her whole body seemed to have evolved and undergone earth-shaking changes. Although the intelligence has been increased, the head has been lifted up, but the body remains in place. In some researches, it is difficult to support the calculation of the brain. You just got up. Did you stay up all night last night? Gwen on the opposite side was a little confused. Looking at the closure plaque hanging next to the closed rolling shutter door, she was silent for a moment. Wait for me to wash up and go back right away. Time is running out, and Merlin doesn't want to spend too much time on the locomotive. The game platform is still in the early stages of construction, so he has to keep an eye on it. In fact, before changing the car, Merlin still wanted the Centauro with the strongest sense of technology in the future, but it was a little too conspicuous when driving on the street. In this way, the safety of going out in the future will be no problem. But her luck is obviously not very good. But according to the information collected, this company is not the only one that sells special vehicles and weapons, so there is no regret. No, there is something I need your help with. When do you have time today? After hanging up the phone, Merlin flushed his face with cold water, and his originally drowsy spirit became more refreshed. After washing up, he checked the progress of the platform in Hell's Kitchen. The bell was still ringing uninterruptedly, and Merlin answered it casually. Ah, yes, my Ducati was smashed to pieces the day before yesterday, and I bought a second-hand one and changed it overnight. After research, it is common to feel hungry all the time. In the past few days, we have reached cooperation with some weapon shops and auto repair shops. The platform provides weapons and vehicles, and they are responsible for selling them, and they will receive a share. It can be said that the transformed Ducati is completely an arsenal with integrated offense and defense. It can not only drive on the ground, but also be used as a flying vehicle to lift off. Also shocked was the transformed RC. She was still a little worried when the engine was disassembled. After all, it was equivalent to the existence of her heart except for the source of fire. Okay, Merlin let out a long breath, and the fatigue brought about by the whole night swept through his body like a wave. Hi, he yawned and called lazily. The next morning, Merlin Modification Shop. However, he did not fall asleep immediately. Instead, he ate something to replenish his empty stomach before returning to the lounge. RC, who had the exhaust pipe wiped, suppressed her shame and anger. In order not to reveal her identity, she could only let this human being play with various parts of her body. After modification, the original engine was changed to an atomic engine, and the injection port was also changed to the back of the big butt. There are also two red-painted wing weapon packs installed on both sides, which are connected to the engine and can eject energy to assist flight. After doing this, he left the store on his modified motorcycle. During the investigation, a mysterious Rockstar game platform surfaced. This platform seemed to cooperate with many weapon shops and car repair shops, and recruited many NPCs online in the form of games to carry out tasks. It's past 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Seeing the time, he became more conscious, and he didn't expect to sleep for so long. If Merlin wasn't right next to her, she really couldn't wait to start the new power engine and go out for a run. After Ducati's original thick and bloated V-shaped 4-cylinder engine was removed and replaced with a small atomic engine, the fuel tank was also emptied, and these parts were installed with 20 deadlock missiles. After the overall transformation, the locomotive is full of heavy but light feeling. Therefore, the modification of the locomotive must be completed tonight, for the sake of own safety. First, wipe off the oil stains in the exhaust pipe and spray it on the ground, and then start to disassemble after cleaning. It's time to recruit some players. Merlin quickly searched the information of everyone in Hell's Kitchen, and after selecting a good person, he quietly sent out the app one by one. The familiar ringtone pulled Merlin out of his sleep. He sat up and rubbed his eyes, then looked at the time on the wall in confusion. While thinking, consciousness has been plunged into darkness. I hope the next one will be a game of biochemical technology. He threw himself heavily on the temporary bed, muttered while looking at the ceiling, and fell asleep with his eyes closed. In the front part of the car, in order to achieve the effect of close combat and interception, the laser energy technology of Evil Pluto is also used to install a laser-guided fire control radar to achieve automatic interception. Look and see her eyes, they glow. What a coincidence. She tilted her head, and then she didn't stay too long. She threw a micro device outside the door and drove away. Therefore, she could only go to offline weapon shops and auto repair shops to check. After starting the vehicle, she held the steering wheel with one hand and took out her mobile phone with the other to look for the next offline weapon shop. However, just as the screen turned on, her pupils suddenly shrank. An app with a yellow star logo was installed on her phone at some point. R-Star. Natasha was stunned for a moment. She had been looking for a way to become a player, but she didn't expect it to come so suddenly. She frowned, then turned the steering wheel left and parked the car on the side of the road. After the car stabilized, she sat in the driver's seat and stared down at the app on her mobile phone for a long time. After coming to Hell's Kitchen, she went to contact Frank. According to Director Fury's evaluation, Frank Castle received rigorous training in the Marine Corps. He is excellent in fighting, shooting, extracting confessions, and intelligence searching, and is familiar with various firearms. It's a 10th level agent. And she who was injected with serum and lived for decades is only level 10. Therefore, according to Fury's instructions, they only need to have normal contact. The words that had been prepared for a long time spit out from her mouth in an orderly manner. During the speech, the emotions were appropriately excited, and it seemed that it was an honor to get Spider-Man's request. Oh my God, Merlin, you are finally back. Gwen finally breathed a sigh of relief after seeing Merlin back. But she found me yesterday. She has been chasing the lizardmen recently, and told me that there are 2 lizardmen, and one of them is Professor Connors. Gwen. On the other hand, after Merlin returned home on his motorcycle, Gwen seemed to have been waiting for a long time, and immediately greeted him. Merlin looked at the other party's delicate and pretty expression with a strange look. But her strength alone is too weak, so she found me and wanted me to research the antidote serum and find a way to stop them. So, after the other party finished speaking, he opened his mouth slowly. Merlin's beard. Arrive at the Brooklyn police station and drive away the inclined magic treasure to Merlin's modification shop. I want to buy a gun. Are there any Mk2 guns and special bullets? Task reward. I think I should say this. You've been so busy recently that you often don't see anyone. Merlin hugged her and then left. Before she could answer, he asked directly, I'm here this time, what can I do for you? It's okay, don't even think about joining your band. The help I need, the 2 of us together will be able to develop the detox serum as quickly as possible. Gwen also stated the purpose of this trip. Okay, you can choose what you want to buy. After the old man was sure, he didn't ask any more questions, but pulled the switch next to the container, and the surface weapon rack quickly rose, revealing the hidden weapons inside. They feel that Merlin has an adventurous spirit and fits well with rock and roll. After becoming a player, any mission can be accepted, and the rewards earned can also be used to purchase special weapons and vehicles in the offline store, and cash can also be withdrawn. Yes, Natasha showed her the proof on the phone. After clicking on the app, the page she had seen from Frank appeared on her phone. It's the first time I've heard of it. Merlin scratched his head. Click on the mall and search for surrounding malls. Show me the evil Pluto. Finally, she pressed the button firmly. Welcome. An old man sitting behind the counter carefully cleaning the golden revolver looked up at her, and then continued to polish his own gun. The golden revolver, she had just seen in the mall. Gwen's acting seems to be getting better and better. Mk2 heavy sniper rifle, pump-action shotgun, carbine, evil Hades, bazooka, Vulcan Gatling. I've praised Spider-Man so many times in front of you, it's all in vain, right? Natasha had a strange expression on her face, she probably meant Frank. Ding. At this moment, a message popped up from the phone. Almost all the weapons available in the Rockstar Mall are available here. And the next thing she was going to was a weapon shop not far away. She clicked on the task, pondered for a while, and then chose to accept it. Melon. This car was taken to the police station by an idiot and impounded. I can change it for you for free when I drive it back. Fortunately, at the time of contact, the other party didn't have too much malice, and also shared about the R-Star game platform. Natasha's eyes froze on the pistol that the old man had wiped, and she recognized it immediately. In any case, since you want to check, you have to join it. Steal a car, what's the matter? It's mysterious. Merlin was also a little puzzled for a moment. Could it be that the other party is going to confess Spider-Man's identity to him? Gwen brooded for a while, and then she looked excited like a fan. You know, my idol is Spider-Man. She didn't know when Connors and the others would implement the plan, but of course the sooner the antidote serum was developed, the better. After searching the R-Star Mall, all kinds of strange weapons and vehicles came into her eyes, almost the same as those on the internet, but many of them were still gray and unlocked. Don't worry about it, I've already thought about it. Soon, the map deeply imprinted in her mind was displayed, exactly. After picking it up, she was not in a hurry, but restarted the vehicle and went to a weapons store that she had already booked. People in our band won't eat you. Gwen rolled her eyes, but speaking of it, her bandmates were indeed a bit noisy, and they kept trying to pull Merlin into the band. The Merlin modification shop that had just left was also marked in it. The old man was also someone who had seen the scene before, and he stood aside calmly and waited quietly. Hearing Natasha's words, the old man who was still cleaning the revolver immediately stood up in surprise. I'm here this time to ask you to help me with some research. She paused suddenly as she spoke, looked back at her mother sitting on the sofa in the living room, then mysteriously hooked Merlin's neck and pushed him into Merlin's home. Are you a player? It was the first time he saw a player coming since he cooperated with the Rockstar platform, so he was a little surprised. She got the news that Professor Connors is planning to release lizard infection agents in Queens recently, turning everyone into lizardmen. Go to your house and talk. A woman is not as attractive as a gun in her hand. But we don't have a laboratory. How do we do research? Merlin spread his hands and asked helplessly. He does have his own laboratory, but he has nothing to do with biology. She complained speechlessly in her heart, and continued to speak. Spider-Man has always been my hero, and also the hero of Apple City. Obviously, the Rockstar platform didn't intend to hide it, but in this way, it would be difficult for her to determine the purpose of developing this game. We sneaked into Osborne Industries at night, and I still have employee cards here. Merlin rested his chin and thought about it under Gwen's nervous and expectant eyes. The basic platform of Hell's Kitchen has been basically completed, and within a week, it should be able to expand to Apple City. Anyway, it is also the first large-scale plot mission for the first batch of players. If you miss it, you don't know how long you will have to wait next time. No problem. Under Gwen's expectant eyes, Merlin nodded and agreed. You are indeed my best friend. I knew you would agree. Gwen excitedly patted Merlin's chest. Ahem. Be gentle, your hand is too strong. The moment his palm came up, Merlin almost gasped. Although his body has been trained and he has learned fighting and gun shooting for a period of time, he is still a little stronger than ordinary people. Sorry. Seeing this, Gwen quickly waved her hand apologetically. During this period of time, she often chased the two lizardmen in the sewers. Although her power control has increased a lot, she will still subconsciously release some power whenever she gets excited. It's okay, I just haven't eaten yet, so I'll leave my dinner to you. Merlin rubbed his chest and said indifferently. No problem. Gwen patted herself on the chest, causing waves. Gwen and the two stood at the door for a while with bright eyes. He asked Stark to keep an eye on the aerospace military factory before, and he has already found one today, and the address is in Brooklyn. It is still very easy for Stark Industries, which has a close relationship with National Defense, to find an aerospace military factory. After having breakfast with Gwen, Merlin rode his motorcycle to Brooklyn. Looking up, most of the lights inside the Osborne Industrial Building have been extinguished, and only scattered areas are still on. Patter. The light flickered, quickly illuminating the vast laboratory inside. The next morning, Professor Connors wants to use the regeneration mechanism in lizards and apply it to stem cell technology to speed up cell regeneration and repair, and complete the regeneration of severed limbs. Let's get started. Gwen casually went to a nearby cabinet and took out 2 sets of dustproof white coats, and threw one set to Merlin. Follow me. Gwen swaggered and led Merlin into the company through the main entrance. Merlin also brought a pen and paper, and began to draw and calculate beside him. The factory is located in a suburb, surrounded by lush greenery, which is somewhat hidden. In Connor's cross-species gene experiment, the regeneration gene of lizard was fused with stem cell growth factor, so as to achieve the ability to regenerate severed limbs. That is when Gwen began to be abnormal. At this time, everyone at Osborne Industries had also gotten off work, so Merlin took Gwen out of the apartment on his motorcycle and headed towards Times Square in Manhattan. The lights in the hall were still on, but there was no one there, and it was empty. After one night, Merlin was not too sleepy because he slept during the day, while Gwen was purely in good health and felt nothing. Afghanistan. Don't know if it is. Gwen's eyes lit up when he heard the words, "This direction is good." Merlin parked the locomotive beside the factory and shook hands with Happy. Generally, the sales or power maintenance departments are working overtime. It has the functions of repair, metabolism regulation and self-renewal. In the early hours of the morning, Gwen pulled Merlin out of the company. After all, they were sneaky, and it would be embarrassing if they were discovered. The experiment has actually been successful, but the side effects of gene fusion are also obvious, human nature. This can be left to the end. The main thing now is to find a way to develop an antidote serum. Gwen shook his head. They don't have much time to perfect the regeneration potion now. As she spoke, she quickly retrieved the data about the lizard's regeneration mechanism from the experiment. Stem cells are mother cells with proliferation and differentiation potential that can self-renew and produce other types of highly differentiated daughter cells. Gwen treated the guests and ordered some takeaways. After the two finished eating, it was almost evening. He doesn't seem like someone who would say sorry. Merlin shrugged, then walked around Happy and walked into the factory area. In the biological and medical fields, stem cells are also the uncrowned king. Many people usually use stem cells to remove facial wrinkles and delay aging. The lizard itself has the control gene of the regeneration mechanism, so it is the most suitable gene in the cross-species gene fusion. After passing through the quiet corridor, Gwen and Merlin quickly arrived at the employee entrance. Merlin pondered for a while. If you want to develop the serum, you need to destroy the regeneration mechanism of the lizard gene. But in the case of cross-species, although it is theoretically possible, it is very difficult, and in the process of gene transfer to the human genome, the carrier will have great defects. The two took the elevator and soon reached the 36th floor. After a night passed, the research progress of the serum still hadn't made any progress, but the experiment was like this: as long as there was a breakthrough and a direction, the next step would be smooth. Hi, here. The round Happy saw Merlin riding a conspicuous red motorcycle from afar. After passing through Times Square, Merlin parked the motorcycle in the underground parking lot next to the company. After both of them changed their clothes, the first step was to turn on the computer and count the progress and data of Connor's experiment. Hi, isn't Mr. Stark here? He looked behind Happy and asked doubtfully. He left temporarily because there was an order in Afghanistan. He originally planned to come to see you, but his friend pressed him so he had to leave first. By the way, let me say sorry to you, Happy explained. This may be the biggest. Merlin nodded. Both Osborne and Stark Industries are located in downtown Manhattan, but one is near the stadium and the other is near Times Square. She took out her employee card and swiped it, the green light turned on, and the alloy door slowly rose. In other words, Professor Connors will lose his mind, probably because the brain stem cells have affected the nervous system. Gwen opened his hand and projected and enlarged a series of cell data, guessing. He is also relatively familiar with Osborne Industries. He also participated in Professor Connors's cross-species gene exhibition with Gwen and Peter. This was originally an aircraft factory jointly built by Lockheed and Aston Martin, but due to some reasons the talks fell apart, so it was temporarily put on hold here. Although the most advanced fighter jets cannot be built here, there is no problem in producing some civil helicopters and ordinary fighter jet engines. Walking into the factory area, the interior is empty, and some obsolete fighter jets are also placed in the square. But it doesn't look cluttered, and many devices are covered with a layer of dustproof cloth. Happy introduced it from the side. Chapter 31. Lockheed is an aviation industry company, and it is a relatively high-ranking aviation manufacturing company in Eagle Country. Aston Martin has a great reputation. Almost many people have heard of this name. It is a luxury car company. Then it looks like I got a bargain. Merlin looked around and found that the equipment was still very new and had hardly been used. He nodded in satisfaction, and then transferred the money. Of course, he bought an aviation aircraft factory to develop helicopters and fighter jets. After all, aircraft are different from vehicles and weapons. During the development period, in addition to requiring a large area of space, the required equipment is also somewhat different. If only the engine was fine. It's really not a small bargain, but what I didn't expect was that you actually wanted to rent this factory. Happy looked at the account information from the mobile phone and was also a little surprised. He remembered that Merlin was still a high school student. He developed an electromagnetic pulse transmitter some time ago and received $1,000 million US. He knew about this because he was still cooperating with his boss's company after all. What surprised him was that the other party had the courage to rent an aviation factory by himself. Happy remembers that at his age, he was still drooling at the goddess of cheerleading every day. I want to look into this. Need manpower. I can find some for you. No, not yet. After signing the formalities, Happy left the aviation factory. Although Stark was urged by Captain Rhodes to go to Afghanistan, Pepper in the company still needed to protect himself. Merlin stayed to start the equipment, while redesigning the production line and installing an intelligent robotic arm. Merlin stayed in the workshop until night, squinting for a while to adjust his mental state. Thinking of going to the Osborne building to study the serum with Gwen, he could only temporarily close the factory door and leave quickly on his motorcycle. He doesn't have the habit of putting other people's pigeons. Due to the large number of people in Brooklyn, the battles between gangs have hardly stopped at night, so Merlin rode his motorcycle very fast on the street without any stops, and only a red line could be seen on the street. Phantom flashed. However, just as he was passing through a secluded suburb, a Ford Mustang suddenly sped up from the opposite side of the street, speeding towards Merlin. Inside the car, a pale and arrogant young man in a black vest with a cigarette in his mouth was staring at him excitedly. He stepped on the gas pedal to the maximum. The black Ford Mustang was like a raging beast, roaring through the air until go to Merlin. In the co-pilot position, there were a few youths looking at Merlin on the locomotive mockingly, as if they had seen the scene where the other party was knocked out. Diddy. The siren of the fire control radar sounded quickly. I didn't expect the first one to come out so fast. Facing the roaring muscle car, Merlin chuckled and then simply pressed the button. Puff! Under the dim streetlight, a missile roared out with its tail fin. Boom! The next moment, a group of bright fireballs soared into the sky in the dark and silent street. At the moment of the explosion, Merlin could even see the terrified expressions of several people in the car under the light of the fire. Family members, who knows, who the hell goes out with missiles? Merlin stopped the locomotive, and the blazing flames shone red on him. He has become accustomed to this. In this free country, he is basically slow-handed and cannot take any chances. After admiring the art of explosion, he restarted the locomotive and left the scene. But before he had gone far, he seemed to have noticed something, and stopped beside a trail. Looking along the path, there is a villa at the end, and the unique ruts of Ford Mustang tires extend from the lawn. Seemingly thinking of something, he quickly took out his phone and checked it. Tisk, what a coincidence. After confirming the identity of the owner of the villa, he smacked his lips, then turned the car and drove over. Following the quiet path to the villa, the door had been violently destroyed and the interior was in a mess. The cold moonlight shone in the hall from the window and the door, and a person and a dog lay on the ground recklessly, with blood flowing down the smooth floor. Merlin stepped forward and looked at the man whose forehead was covered in blood and passed out on the ground. He has long black hair, a beard, and a face with eyes closed that is full of melancholy and a hint of coldness. The killer, John Wick, a ruthless man who killed 3 people in a row with just a pencil. Oh, poor little dog. Merlin knelt down, looked at the weakly breathing beagle, and reached out to hug him. Thinking that they just lacked an experimental subject, he prepared to take the beagle away. Glancing at John, who was still unconscious, he left an app in the opponent's mobile phone and left the scene with the beagle in his arms. Osborne Industries, Transspecies Genetics Laboratory. Oh, my God, Merlin, why did you bring a dog in? Gwen exclaimed, pointing to the beagle in Merlin's arms. I found it on the road, don't we have no experimental subjects? Let's use this dog. Merlin put the beagle on the test bench and galloped all the way, but he was still holding his last breath. Using dogs for experiments. Gwen couldn't bear it. Okay, it's dying, if it can be revived, it's okay to assist in the experiment. Merlin hurriedly urged, without making regeneration potion, this guy will really be helpless. Going to die. Gwen seemed to be mainly aware of the situation of the beagle at this time. She originally thought that Merlin caught it from somewhere. When she came back to her senses, she immediately turned on the equipment, and started to make the regeneration potion according to the experimental data left by Professor Connors. On Merlin's side, he was concerned about the state of the beagle, but he was not a veterinarian, so he had no good way to deal with it. Fortunately, Gwen was very fast and had the raw materials left by Connors. In half an hour, a tube of green regenerative potion was produced. The vitality of the beagle is also relatively tenacious, and it lasted until the potion was completed. After the preparation of the medicine was completed, Merlin took it from Gwen and injected it into the beagle without much hesitation. It's about to die, is the regenerative potion still effective? Gwen looked at the dog with blood stained at the corner of his mouth, and couldn't help showing pity. Who on earth was so cruel to it? It depends, as long as the stem cell doesn't die before it divides and makes new cells, it's fine. Under the attention of the two, the damaged cells in the beagle's body were dividing at an extremely fast rate, producing new cells to fill the damaged area. With the production of new cells, its feeble breathing gradually calmed down. Have you ever neutered animals? Sterilization. Gwen was stunned for a moment when he heard this, and then looked at the beagle on the test bench with a strange expression. Although I haven't done it before, as long as the bleeding is stopped at the moment of cutting. The body of the beagle on the test bench trembled subconsciously. I don't know if it was because of gene regeneration, or because he felt inexplicable malice. Then come on, after neutering it will save it from urinating and screaming in the laboratory. Merlin staggered his body. Is it really necessary to be sterilized? Does its owner know? Gwen walked over excitedly, picking up an anesthetic needle and a scalpel, but still asked uncertainly. We're also doing it for the dog's health, no problem. Merlin waved his hand indifferently. Hearing this, Gwen didn't continue to ask, but first anesthetized the beagle, and then began to prepare items for disinfection. Although the beagle dog has been injected with regenerative medicine, if the egg is cut off to seal the wound and the anesthesia effect is added, it is not known whether it will grow back. After finishing the work on the beagles, Merlin and the others devoted themselves to the serum research again. Duke, is that you? Great, you are really still alive. Hearing the barking of the dog, he responded excitedly, and his nervous mood relaxed a lot. John was also taken aback. His dog's strength seemed to have grown a lot, and the hair on his body also had a faint green luster, and his sharp claws and teeth were like a lion at this time. Tuck tuck tuck. There was a knock on the door, and John took a few steps back vigilantly, and quietly touched the handle of the pistol, ready to deal with emergencies at any time. John. Buzz buzz. Suddenly, the phone in his bag vibrated twice. John glanced at the unsuspecting Merlin, then at his pet dog, and then entered the room. But fortunately, the closeness to him in the eyes has not diminished in any way. Merlin's beard. Destroy the Russian gang. He knelt down and stretched out his fingers to stick some blood, which was the blood of his pet dog. Upon closer inspection, the whole body has become much more aggressive, as if it has undergone some genetic modification. He tried to recall for a while, but he didn't have any memory except for the incident of those Russian gangsters breaking into his house. He took out his phone to check it, but when he saw the message, he squinted his eyes with some doubts. Come in first. But his phone has never downloaded the software. John immediately got up and walked out of the living room, and searched around his villa, but still did not find the dog's body. Wow, woof, woof. However, before the door opened, a familiar dog barked suddenly sounded inside the door. Looking at the broken door and the empty garage, he frowned. Looking at the closed shutter door of the modification shop and the closing sign hanging beside it, John was silent for a moment, then walked to the small door beside him and knocked. Remuneration. 100 million. R* is a software push message. The long-term comfort made him forget the sense of crisis, and he was actually sneaked into the house by a few hooligans. The next morning, Brooklyn. After calming down a bit, he cleaned the wound on his head first, then broke open the underground weapon box that had been dusty for a long time, took some weapons for self-defense, and then went to the Merlin modification shop. Didn't you bring a gift? Merlin sat on the sofa, as if he had just woken up, with messy hair and sleepy eyes. As if recalling something, he immediately staggered to his feet and looked around the living room, but he didn't see his pet dog. Thinking of the scene he saw in a daze last night, his beagle was beaten to the ground with a baseball bat by several gangsters, and thrown in front of him provocatively. It's his pet dog. Hiss. John, who was lying on the cold floor, took a deep breath while clutching his bloody head, and slowly sat up. But the embarrassment is only for a while. The most important thing for him now is to figure out the current situation and the purpose of the boy in front of him. In the end, he still focused on the app that suddenly appeared on his phone. After he passed out last night, it might have something to do with it. Russian gangs are doing a lot of evil in Brooklyn. Well, their son-in-law tried to hit me with a car yesterday, so I don't think their gang needs to exist anymore. Melon Shao, the owner of this store, also stopped by your house last night, and saved your beloved dog by the way. What happened last night? He returned to the sofa in the living room and sat down with some headaches. What happened last night seemed not that simple. Hell's Kitchen, Merlin tuning shop. What's wrong with Duke? John asked over his shoulder. He could also see that Merlin didn't have much malice, so he relaxed a lot. It was his Duke. The reason for the dispute was that the other party had taken a fancy to his Ford Mustang. My God, this is really a big favor. Hearing that his beloved dog was still alive, John was excited for a moment. After his wife died, what he cared most about was the beagle dog left by his wife, which was the only sustenance left by her wife. When John saw the young and somewhat excessive teenager in front of him, he couldn't help but froze for a moment, but he didn't relax his vigilance. Instead, he looked through him at the dog in the room that was locked in a cage and kept barking excitedly. Ah, it's so noisy, I just fell asleep. Accompanied by a young boy's voice and the sound of footsteps approaching, the small door opened quickly. There is an address under the row of words, which is the Merlin modification shop in Hell's Kitchen. However, the regenerative medicine injected into its body has some side effects, and it needs to be observed for a few days. He was a little embarrassed, as if the other party had rescued his dog, and it was not appropriate to come here empty-handed. He clicked on the app, and before he had time to look at the software page, the message that popped up on the top made his heart suddenly shake. The beagle was extremely excited after seeing its owner, and kept jumping on the cage, making loud crackling noises, and the iron cage also vibrated violently, as if it was about to fall apart in the next moment. John thought about it for a while, but he didn't think that he had any intersection with the person in front of him. Who are you? However, he was also a little worried when he heard that the medicine would have side effects, and then he walked quickly to his dog. By the way, your poor dog has been rescued by me, and it was neutered by the way, remember to take the money. You know the lizard man who has been making a lot of noise recently. It is injected with the same regeneration potion as that one. Otherwise you can only see its small tombstone now. Lizard Man, regeneration potion. Although John was in a hermit state, he was still aware of the big news in Apple City. Don't forget to go back and raise money. The regeneration potion that brings the dead back to life is very expensive. Although Duke seemed to have mutated at this time, John was thankful to be able to survive. However, he was still a little surprised that this high school student actually had a regeneration potion in his hands. How much does it cost? He asked. Although he had been an assassin for many years, he got most of the killer gold coins. Although he had a balance of tens of millions, the regeneration potion that could bring the dead back to life was obviously a sky-high price. Just count it as million, and you owe me a favor. Merlin said indifferently. As for the side effects, he glanced at the ferocious beagle in the cage. I think it would be good to leave it on. It will make you feel more at ease. John also took a look at his beloved dog. Although he became a little weird, he was inexplicably more handsome. Although regenerative medicine is mainly used for human genes, the effect of extracting stem cells and using them on animals is still very good. Except for some changes in the body, the reason is still there. This software, you installed it for me. After confirming that there was no problem with the dog's safety, John finally remembered about the Rockstar app. With that said, he took out his phone. No, I am just the manager of the modification shop under this game platform. After you become a player, you can get rewards by performing tasks, and then buy vehicles and weapons from me. Have you seen the shopping mall inside? What I sell here is the one above. John nodded understandingly. Then, this mission to destroy the Russian gang was also sent by you. Yes, can you handle it? If not, you can cooperate with other players, and you can divide it into yourselves. I don't have much time to help you recently. Merlin yawned. He studied all night last night, and he had no time to take action. No need. John shook his head with a stern face. Even without the task issued by Merlin, he would never spare the Russian gang. Similarly, the leader of the Russian gang also targeted John. The person who was behind the wheel of the Ford Mustang last night was his son, and he also blamed John for his son's death. He believes that this kind of thing can only be done by John, who was once the #1 killer in the world. Whatever you want, your dog will be temporarily placed here for observation for a period of time. If you want to stay longer, you can, but don't disturb my sleep. After saying that, Merlin left the temporary reception hall with a tired look on his face and returned to his lounge. John watched Merlin's back gradually disappear, and then looked back at his dog. The feeling of regaining it made him unable to help but hugged it out of the cage. Sorry. When Merlin woke up, John was still there, petting his dog. Wong wong wong. After seeing Merlin, the beagle, who originally looked like he was enjoying the petting, immediately yelled at him angrily and even rushed out to bite him. But he was stopped by John. Bick. Okay, isn't it just to help you sterilize? This is beneficial. It can help you prevent all kinds of troubles and diseases. Merlin said lazily as he passed by. It was already 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and Gwen should be waiting for herself. After washing up, he returned to the temporary reception hall again. John hasn't left until now, obviously something happened. I want to buy some weapons from you, Mk2 heavy sniper rifles and various types of special bullets, as well as ballistic knives and Mk2 heavy revolvers. After Merlin came back from washing, he said the weapon he wanted to buy. They are all special weapons. He wants to buy them and use them for special occasions. Ordinary weapons are enough for him. Okay, come with me. After sending John away with a determined face, Merlin also rode his motorcycle to find Gwen, who was waiting for him next door to Osborne Industry. Good evening. Merlin greeted feebly and sat down opposite, with food already prepared in front of him. Are you okay? Gwen was a little worried seeing Merlin's current state. It's okay, I can hold on. Merlin was a little hungry after sleeping all day. Without saying anything, he sat across from him and picked up a sandwich and started eating. Gwen smiled a little embarrassedly. After all, he had a genetic mutation and his physique had improved a lot, but the friend in front of him was still an ordinary person, so it was really uncomfortable to turn day and night like this. In order not to feel uncomfortable, she picked up her phone to divert her attention. Merlin, look at the news. The CEO of Stark Industries, Tony Stark, was attacked in Afghanistan and his whereabouts are unknown now. There's a lot of schadenfreude down here. Merlin took a sip of juice, then took the phone and looked at it. Tony Stark went to Afghanistan and was attacked by terrorists, and his whereabouts are unknown now. Obadiah issued a statement that Tony Stark must be retrieved. The Ministry of Defense issued a statement. Parliament issued a statement warning Afghanistan. The entire network seemed to be about to explode, and it was all news about Tony Stark being attacked by terrorists, and all parties quickly issued statements, either resolutely or condemned. And under these news, there are mostly some gloating comments. The weapons dealer was caught, and God must not be able to stand it anymore. The merchant of death, who spreads death, will only return to death in the end. Suddenly feel that the terrorists are doing the right thing, very happy. In this way, refugees in war zones will suffer less in the future. Merlin took a look and lost interest. He had expected this kind of thing. He didn't panic too much about this, and he shouldn't act until a few days later. The main thing now is to develop the serum as quickly as possible. Now the group of people from Stark Industries and National Defense should be falling apart. Gwen didn't care too much. He didn't have a deep connection with Stark Industries, and he was just eating melons as a bystander. The two ordered a cup of coffee to refresh themselves. After waiting for a few hours, the sky was gloomy, and the two also started to go to Osborne Industry in a familiar way. Afghanistan, in an unknown Gobi cave. Under the dim light, Stark, who was originally high-spirited, was pale at this time, holding a battery like a tramp. Next to him was a thin Dr. Ethan wearing glasses. He is able to survive now, but also thanks to the other party's superb medical skills and whimsy. Stark's ventricular blood vessels were embedded with explosion fragments. If it weren't for the battery made by Ethan to temporarily absorb the fragments and wait for them to flow into the heart, no matter how tenacious Stark's vitality is, he would be powerless. I didn't expect that I was caused by my own company's weapons. Stark muttered self-deprecatingly, feeling ironic in his heart. As the executive president of Stark Industries, he will eventually be sent to the end by his own weapons. Now he only relies on the battery and the electromagnet on his chest to survive. The cold and dark cave and the circles of members of the 10 Commandments outside the door make him unable to see any hope. Mr. Stark, cheer up, the outside must have been blown up, and everyone is looking for you. You have also seen the weapons of the 10 Commandments gang. Your whole life has been mastered by these murderers, but now it will become your legacy. Are you really willing? Ethan said in a deep voice, pushing his glasses and looking at Stark, who was depressed and decadent. His hometown is still waiting for him, but he knows that he has no ability to escape. The only thing he can rely on is Tony Stark in front of him. Don't you want to do something? Tony still bowed his head and remained silent. Just when Ethan couldn't help but speak again to encourage him, he spoke pessimistically. Great, we made it. Crack. The moment a crisp electronic sound sounded, the regenerative gene sequence collapsed and spread apart like a precarious bridge. The moment the two came into contact, the blue genetic data spread quickly like ink dripping onto a white paper and merged into the regeneration genes. Before dawn, Gwen carefully took the prepared green serum out of the thermostat. He took out his cell phone and couldn't help but twitching his lips after seeing the message on it. After nearly a week of staying up all night, they finally succeeded. In fact, after success, according to the decay rate algorithm, the next step is just to keep experimenting. With the experience in Hell's Kitchen, the first stealth annihilator gunship production line was built in 3 days, and now the materials and parts are in place, and the first one has been put into production. Immediately afterwards, under the watchful eyes of the two, the regenerative gene sequence trembled violently under the infection of the blue genetic data. There are many accessories in the Annihilator gunship in reality, so there are not many additional parts that need to be made, and the main thing is the outer stealth coating technology. It's really double happiness. At this time, the stem cells under the influence of genes are constantly dividing and expanding to form new cells. Stark was wearing a thin blanket, sitting opposite Ethan, and the flickering flames reflected the cloudy and sunny faces of the two of them. Seeing this scene, the somewhat nervous expressions of the two immediately became agitated. Hearing that Stark, the tough guy, finally agreed, the leader of the 10 Commandments gang was of course excited, and received him as if he was seeing a relative, and met all his requirements. What else can I do? No matter what I do, they will kill me. The flat tone reveals deep despair. Even if they don't kill me, I won't survive a week at most. Afghanistan, inside a Gobi cave. Stark didn't speak, his pupils reflected flickering flames, and he seemed to think of something. His eyes became brighter and brighter. Upon hearing this, Gwen immediately threw the blue genetic data in front of her into the lizard's regeneration gene sequence. Stop, 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 we have to continue testing, don't be anxious. Although Merlin was also excited, he had expected it, so he was not as excited as Gwen. Let's get started. Merlin nodded as he looked at the rapidly dividing gene cell group. According to the experimental sequence, this string of genetic data is the lizard's regeneration gene. Merlin on the side was about to speak when his phone suddenly vibrated. Speaking of the latter, he excitedly lifted the battery in his arms. For a while, Apple City was full of uproar, but it fell into a strange calm, like a powder keg that might explode at any time. At night, the cave gradually became icy cold. Ethan found a pile of firewood from somewhere, and set up a bonfire in an open space. Saturday night, Osborne Industries. The killer ranked first, and John, who hadn't appeared for a long time, shot again, which also caused a shock in the killer world. In the next few days, the entire Apple City was still flooded with news about Stark, but as time went by, many people believed that Stark was dead. And George is also busy tracking down the traces of the Lizardman. Although he was informed by the teacher, he has no time. He was covered in oil and stains, but his mental state was completely different from a few days ago. During this period, in Brooklyn, the Russian gang that dominated one block was wiped out by John alone, leaving no one alive. In this place where the birds don't shit, he doesn't think there will be any signal. As soon as he thought of it, he immediately found members of the Ten Commandments gang and expressed his willingness to make Jericho missiles for them, but he needed to calculate the panels and missile parts. Maybe you're right. This is a crucial week, isn't it? Ethan suddenly broke the silence. Merlin and Gwen went to Osborne Industries every night to research the lizard serum. During the day, Merlin went to the aviation manufacturing factory to adjust the first smart assembly line. Merlin, did you see that? We did it. We succeeded. Gwen's eyes lit up and she shouted excitedly. The power in the battery is only enough to support him for less than a week. When the power runs out, the simple electromagnetic device on his chest will also lose its magnetism, and the fragments left in the body will flow into the heart along the blood vessels. Yes, test it quickly. It will be up to tonight to see if it can be done. Gwen also came back to his senses, and hurried back to the projection test bench. Merlin and Gwen stood in front of the experimental projection platform, looking nervously at the yellow genetic data map projected by the virtual. But everyone's attention was focused on the news of Stark's disappearance. What are you going to do? Ethan asked curiously. Only the computer panel. He hesitated for a while, but after Stark stated that it was only used for cluster missile splitting calculations, the leader of the Ten Commandments gang agreed. Stark is holding a palm-sized computer in his hand at this time, and the battery in his hand has been discarded at some point, and replaced with a circle of energy that exudes white light. It's not enough to have an iron shell, but we have to find a way to call for support. Stark glanced at the armor parts made of missile shells, shook his head and said, "Call for backup. There's no signal here." Ethan looked puzzled. "Just give it a try. The worst thing you can do is rush out wearing armor," Stark said, placing a palm-sized computer panel on a missile and pretending to debug it. RG-003. RG-003 is the invitation code that Merlin sent him at the previous banquet, and he can join the platform after adding his own identity information. However, after getting the invitation code, he was a little cautious and did not enter it immediately to join the platform. He didn't want his position to be determined. Therefore, he wanted to learn more about it, and decided to join after confirming that it was correct. He did follow the clues to find Hell's Kitchen. But before he could find out, the person had already arrived in this dark cave. Now he had no choice but to hope that the game platform Merlin mentioned could pinpoint his location. The surroundings are all monitored, and sooner or later his making of the armor will be discovered. After entering the invitation code plus identity information on the small screen of the computer, it began to enter the loading page. Soon, an R-star icon flickered, and then a page popped up. The first thing that appeared was the Rockstar Mall. Although he really wanted to take a closer look at the various strange products in the mall, he also knew what he urgently needed right now. Thinking of the quests that Merlin said could be posted on the platform, he immediately swiped the screen to search for them. Soon, an option to issue a mission popped up. Seeing this scene, he became a little nervous. He glanced at Ethan, who was still pretending to confuse members of the Ten Commandments gang. His face became firmer, and he clicked. A page quickly popped up on the screen. "Welcome, Mr. Tony Stark, please write down the task you want to issue." Stark swallowed. This scene of seeing the dawn of hope made his mouth dry. "I was kidnapped by the Ten Commandments gang in the Middle East, who will save me?" After he wrote down the task, he uploaded it. The loading page turned for a while, and then a line of words was displayed. "The task is successfully generated, please select the task reward." Mission reward. Stark was stunned for a moment, and then looked a little dumbfounded at the zero balance displayed on the platform. "Stark, are you okay?" At this time, Ethan, who was acting on the side, urged in a low voice. Stark squatted there for too long, and the Ten Commandments gang sitting in the monitoring room would find it abnormal if he continued like this. Hearing Ethan's urging voice, Stark didn't hesitate. In this case, he can only sell knowledge first. However, after he entered the technology information of the Jericho cluster missile, it showed that it failed, and the platform also ejected that there was already relevant technology. Afterwards, he tried to input other Stark Industries weapon technology information, but basically all of them were brushed off by the platform, and it showed that he already had relevant or more advanced technology. In the end, he could only look at the energy in his chest and the armor concept in his mind. He hesitated for a moment, but thinking about his current situation, it was not his style to die and take him to hell. Thinking of this, he immediately began to write technical materials and sent up the technology of the cold nuclear fusion reactor. Bang! Suddenly, there was a sound from the big iron door, and then the leader broke in with people holding AKs. Stark's heart twitched suddenly, but he still pretended to be calm and continued to input technical information. Although it is only a palladium element, it still takes a certain amount of time to write it down. What he didn't expect was that the R-Star platform actually had controllable nuclear fusion technology, but its size was still a bit huge. Instead of shrinking to the size of a palm like his chest, it is a safer and more stable cold nuclear fusion. "What are you doing?" The leader's face was as mild as possible, and this person in front of him was his cash cow. Ethan immediately stepped forward to translate. "I'm writing a program for the missile. The cluster missile needs program instructions in the air," Stark said casually. "Anyway, the Jericho missile was developed by himself, so he can say whatever he wants." Ethan immediately translated for the leader of the Ten Commandments gang. "Very good, really professional." The leader saw Stark looking at the missile with a serious face and constantly writing something. He didn't know anything about it, but he felt Stark's professionalism. So with a smile on his face, he said something to Ethan in Arabic, praised and urged him a few words, and then left the cave. Bang! The iron door closed slowly, and the members of the Ten Commandments gang came and went quickly. And Stark suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. "What are you doing?" Ethan seemed to sense something was wrong, and asked quickly. "Issuing a mission, let someone come rescue us," Tony said casually. "What? Can you contact the outside?" Ethan immediately became excited when he heard this. Stark was not answering him, but was concentrating on compiling the information. Uploaded successfully, estimating the value. The estimated value is 300 trillion. Congratulations on becoming an R-Star 5-star technician. Stark didn't glance at the amount, and then immediately entered the amount in the generated task. The task has been generated. Rescue R-Star 5-star technician, Tony Stark. Remuneration: million. The task has been issued, waiting for the player to accept it. Merlin's beard took your quest. The Punisher took your quest. Don't mess with my dog took your quest. Black Widow took your quest. Bullseye took your quest. Erica has accepted your quest. The number of personnel has reached the upper limit. Not long after the mission was sent out, it was picked up by 6 people. Stark was a little confused when he looked at the name of the player who took the mission. Except for the Punisher who knows some, what the hell are the others? Can't the real name system be used? By the way, let me introduce some of their respective occupations, so that he, the employer, can feel more at ease. But Merlin's beard couldn't be that kid Merlin. Mr. Stark, Ethan reminded him when he saw him in a daze. Here we come. He also knew that he couldn't stay for too long, so he immediately put on a show and quit the app, and then replaced it with the data page. This is the only way he can communicate with the outside world. But no matter what, you have to be prepared with both hands. He returned to the workbench and continued to pick up the hammer and strike iron. Hell's Kitchen. Natasha, who was stealing a car, saw that it was a task about Tony Stark, so she took it without hesitation. Recently, the intelligence organizations of all parties have turned upside down because of Stark's affairs. Everyone is looking for him, and S.H.I.E.L.D. is no exception. But I didn't expect it to appear in the game. On the other side, Bullseye, Erica and others were called because of the amount of money, while the Punisher and John were called by Merlin. As for Daredevil Matt, he was sitting in his law firm at this moment, and had just finished listening to the mission voice played on his mobile phone, but the next moment he heard the news that the mission staff had reached the limit. He sat on the chair for a long time without saying a word. How could this group of people move so fast? Bully me, a blind man, right? My money, my Erica. Matt raised his head to the ceiling with a look of lovelessness on his face. Although he also joined Star R as a player, but because of the principle of superheroes, he rarely kills people. Compared with the amount earned by Bullseye and Punisher, it is simply incomparable. Now he said that he was short of money and he was short of money, but he said that he was not short of money and he was not short of money, and he was even richer. The lack of money is because he cannot afford some vehicles in the Rockstar Mall. He is still saving money to buy a vigilante. What's not lacking is that he has recently made millions through the gaming platform. Compared with the past situation where he was completely impoverished and even had to pay to fight lawsuits for some poor people, he is undoubtedly much richer. But for him now, money is secondary, and he still cares more about the news of his ex-girlfriend Erica. But it's a pity that these young people don't talk about martial arts and bully him, a blind man. No, I must go and have a look. Thinking of the beard of Merlin among the players, it might be that guy Merlin, so he decided to go to the store to ask at night. A woman in a tight black battle suit appeared in front of the store. As for Bullseye, Frank and John are all regular customers of the store. Bullseye, who originally put his hand on his waist, also quietly retracted his hand. He didn't want to be set on fire. I didn't expect that the little genius from Midtown High School would show up here. After Natasha parked the car at the workstation, she ignored the notification sound on her phone that the task was completed. Instead, she got out of the car and said to Merlin with interest. He fell in love with this Shitaro as soon as it came out, and even bought the matching Death Wake costume. However, after buying it and driving it for a few days, he found that it was not as comfortable to drive as his Shinbinu. The whole body of the motorcycle is rough, and the body looks like it is composed of skeletons. The head of the skeleton has scarlet eyes, like a hellish ghost, full of wild and wasteland style, which is in sharp contrast with the Bullseye Shitaro. Christmas only, Journey of the Saints. Natasha, dressed as the driver, flickered at the address on the phone of a truck coming out of the police station's impounded car area. I just stole the sloped magic treasure and happened to be on my way. And the Bullseye guy was there. I'm here. The cold voice suddenly sounded from Merlin's ears, startling him. Wow. At this moment, the shutter door of the modification shop slowly opened, breaking the silence. After the 6 people accepted the task, an address quickly popped up on everyone's mobile phone, but it was not where Tony Stark was. Although Erica knew about this store through Kingpin, she had never been there in person. The last time she followed Frank, he flew away and disappeared into the night sky, and she lost it. Galloping on the street is a locomotive, more precisely, a locomotive full of futuristic technology. Handsome is handsome, but it's really uncomfortable to drive. Taking off his helmet, Bullseye with a round target on his forehead got out of the car and complained. Frank also saw the Bullseye in front of him. After all, the opponent's car and clothes were too high profile, like a spirited guy, it was hard not to notice. This store was left by my father, and I don't want it to close down. Merlin took out a bottle of Coke from the refrigerator and threw it at her. Frank the Punisher. The most conspicuous thing about the locomotive is the flashing silver phantom streamline lights on the surface and the two huge, wide wheels. Against the background of the silver-white lights, it looks like a galloping phantom leopard. Duke, be quiet. John smoothed his pet dog's hair and calmed him down. Da da da. At this time, the sound of a heavy motorcycle sounded again, and as two red lights approached, a long-handled motorcycle with a skull head stopped in front of the store. Merlin Modification Shop. Very conspicuous in the dark. The four people and one dog observed each other, but they didn't speak. Under the cool night, they looked extremely dull at this moment. None of these people are simple. The three narrowed their eyes, and under their gaze, a melancholy man in a suit and long hair came out of the car. She opened the rear compartment, and soon a slope magic treasure was driven out by her. Then a muscle car painted in black and red drove over and stopped in front of the store. And similarly, it seems that in order to set off the appearance of the locomotive full of futuristic sci-fi, the driver also put on a white luminous prototype costume, like a target. Natasha shook her hair, looked at the two people who were at war, and smiled. Go ahead, I'm just here to deliver a car. Frank recognized that it was the vehicle he had previously impounded by the police. The five people outside looked at each other. Natasha drove the inclined magic treasure into the shop first, and the others followed closely. Black Widow, don't mess with my dog. Punisher, Bullseye, one more. He thought for a while and said. Wearing a mask and wearing a red tights, Erica came out of the darkness like a ghost holding a steel fork. Merlin's figure walked out. The car stopped slowly, and a tough guy wearing a white skull shirt stepped out of the car. Just as the two men were at war, a truck slowly stopped in front of the store, and then a driver in orange work clothes opened the door and walked out, and began to take off his clothes after getting off the car. Please go to Merlin Modification Shop. Buzz buzz. At this time, a sound like the roar of a wild beast sounded again, mixed with the sound of an engine similar to a cat's meowing. Climb too low, making him a bit uncomfortable to drive. Okay, since we're all here, come with me. Merlin waved his hand, then turned and walked into the shop. Buzz. The dull sound of a motorcycle suddenly broke the silent night, and a silver-white phantom was speeding on the street. Compared to a few days ago, Duke was much bigger, like a little lion, but he still exuded the aura of a cold-blooded animal. The locomotive stopped slowly in front of the Merlin Modification Shop, and the silver-white light strips on the vehicle and clothes also went out. In the evening, Merlin Modified Shop. Adventurer Iron Fist Hellfire, Prototype Dodge Hellcat. And the recycling business. Sensing the temperament of the visitor, a trace of caution flashed in Bullseye, and he subconsciously put his hands on his waist, but his expression became a little crazy. He was also itchy. Woof woof woof. Accompanied by a low barking sound, a dog with green hair all over its body, exuding wildness like a lion, jumped out of the car and roared at the three of them. After making a few noises, he revealed his sharp and ferocious fangs. Immediately afterwards, it was thrown to Erica, Bullseye, Frank and the others. The atmosphere relaxed a lot for a while, and everyone held a bottle of Coke in their hands, as if they were attending a party. Wong wong wong. Okay, I almost forgot about you. Merlin took out a beef bone from the refrigerator and threw it out. I saved your life and gave you something to eat. I just helped you get rid of your troubles. There's no need to hold grudges. Merlin looked at Piccolo, who was gnawing on the bone, and patted his head. Woof woof. Piccolo, who was happily eating beef bones, instantly opened his mouth and bit Merlin's palm. But Merlin had expected it a long time ago, so he took advantage of the situation to hide, and even knocked him on the head. Piccolo tried to bite again, but it was still empty. Wong wong wong, wong. Merlin just teased it a few times, and Piccolo yelled angrily at the back, and then froze his own bone, leaving him alone. I think I should let go of my hand. John looked a little funny at the way he loved the dog, and stretched out his hand to stroke its head to comfort him. If someone else was teasing Piccolo like this, the reins he was holding would not be so stable. Take off. Seeing that the rear was quiet, Merlin started the engine of the Annihilator. Come one by one, I can answer all the questions for you. Merlin pressed his hand, and then organized his words. Bullseye is so powerful that almost anything can become a lethal weapon in his hands, even a paper airplane can penetrate glass in his hands. This mission is located in a hidden cave in Afghanistan, and the target of the mission, Tony Stark, is also here. Hearing this, everyone's eyes were on Merlin. Buzz buzz. The propeller rotated slowly, then faster and faster, and soon formed a circular afterimage. Another step late. The exterior is a completely black invisible coating, with almost no dazzling refraction under the light. The fuselage also lifted off slowly. John's eyes widened a bit. Although the share was fine, it didn't sound right. And in this mission, I will be the logistics staff, responsible for pickup, and provide weapons and planning. The others also stared in amazement at the giant beast shrouded in black in front of them. The Stealth Annihilator, based on the Black Hawk, is equipped with a new stealth technology and an atomic engine that can evade satellite and radar detection. The stealth system was turned on, and with a ripple on the surface of the fuselage, the huge armed helicopter merged perfectly into the dark night, with only the hum of the propellers. It's necessary to tease more, it will help to enhance the relationship. We each have 1/6 of the rest, how about 5,000 million each? After Merlin finished speaking, he waited for their response. Erica and Bullseye are also well-known killers in the underworld. Although Bullseye also dislikes Erica because Jin Bin pays more and more attention to him, but since joining the game platform to accept various tasks, he has gained after more money, he didn't care much about it. However, the next moment, the eyes of the Punisher, Natasha, and John immediately focused on him. Bullseye, we are teammates now. You can kill wherever you want. After this mission, your reputation in the killer world will definitely increase a lot, but now that you are thrown off the plane, you have nothing. Merlin, the main driver, turned around and reminded. He felt that Piccolo would never forgive Merlin who sterilized him. When will we start the mission? Where is Tony Stark now? After everyone sat down, Natasha took the lead to get to the point. According to the instructions of the task, they gathered here, and it was obvious that the important point was on Merlin. Erica opened the hatch without saying a word and entered the helicopter, and the others walked in with their weapons in their arms. But with them together, Bullseye would definitely turn into a corpse and be thrown out of the helicopter. Good dog. Bullseye tried to reach out and touch Piccolo's head, but he almost turned his head and bit his hand. After saying that, Merlin opened the hatch and sat in the driver's seat. After everyone had chosen their weapons, Merlin led them to an open space behind the modification shop. Except for the Punisher, most of the others are not their opponents when they are singled out. But as the flight got higher and higher, the sound gradually became weaker, until there was no sound at all. Playing games and killing people was much more interesting than the tasks Kingpin gave him. Natasha herself doesn't care much about the share, as long as she can see Stark. The following is the division. There are 6 people and 1 dog among us here. John and the dog are divided into 1/6. Natasha and Erica discovered that among the people present, Merlin seemed to be very familiar with the other 3 people, only the 2 of them met for the first time. As for when the mission will begin, we will set off as soon as you are sure you are ready. You'd better not mess with it. John, who was opposite, said lightly. Just enough to carry 6 people, go up. Bullseye twisted his head, his eyes flashed a hint of tyranny, and his mouth squirmed accordingly. Although everyone is not very familiar with it, they can probably perceive their respective abilities, and in the end, everyone has no opinion. Natasha sat in a row with Frank and John, and Bullseye sat in a row with Erica, but separated by Piccolo. The overall slender fuselage structure is like an osprey, equipped with missile launch systems on both sides, full of lightness and agility. Among the audience, except for Natasha's identity, few people know about it. Wow, you even have an armed helicopter in the store. Natasha couldn't help but said in surprise. Needless to say, the Punisher and John are the kind of ruthless people who single-handedly destroy the group. I'm here. Matt, who had just arrived at the Merlin modification shop, patted the shop door in annoyance as he listened to the roar of the helicopter. UH-60, Black Hawk Special Armed Helicopter. Frank also read out the model of the helicopter in front of him in surprise. Everyone didn't have much opinion on Merlin's share. After all, without the other party as logistics, it would be difficult for them to carry out the task. Bullseye sensed the gazes of several people, his mouth squirmed twice, and finally put the paper clip back into the socket with a look of reluctance. John, invisibility technology. Natasha raised her eyebrows, and then touched the body of the car with her hands. It was cold, as if she was touching ice. The invisible annihilator flew over Eagle Country with 6 people and a dog, and soon arrived at the border. After going through numerous detections, he successfully crossed the border and headed for Afghanistan. In the early hours of the morning, on a barren Gobi desert, the annihilator was quietly moving in the dark night, hovering in midair. "Guys, we're here. Remember to put on your headphones." Natasha and the others put on the parachute and opened the hatch. Not far away, in the barren desert hills, dots of lights emerged impressively. The propeller of the gunship stopped spinning at some point, and a row of faint blue energy was ejected from the base. Supported by the auxiliary atomic energy engine, the annihilator is like an eagle lurking in the darkness, flashing with little lights and quietly lurking in the night sky. Natasha and the others were obviously familiar with this. After putting on the night vision goggles and opening the hatch, they jumped down under the howling cold wind and plunged into the dark night sky. Erica and others followed one after another, and the last one, John, was a little slower because he wanted to take his pet dog with him. After everyone jumped off, Merlin in the driver's seat also opened his laptop. "Guys, can you get it?" He turned on the headset and called. "Roger that, Roger that." Along with the sharp whistling sound, the steady voices of Natasha and others sounded in the headset one after another. "Very well. The first thing is to remember to attach the electromagnetic signal device to their computer. So let Erica sneak in first, and after I control all the surveillance, you can also take action. Of course, I don't care if anyone wants to find some excitement for themselves. As for which one of you is unhappy, wait until the mission is over to resolve it. It's good to cheer everyone up," Merlin reminded. Among them, the most unstable one is of course Bullseye, a somewhat neurotic guy. In Maylin's usual conversation with him, the two got along pretty well, and both liked to have some fun, but Bullseye liked to shoot people, while Merlin liked to find some excitement. But according to Bullseye's nervous head, when he met someone he didn't know well, he exchanged a few words, his hands were itchy, and he didn't know it, so he threw things over. "How about we compare who can kill more people?" Bullseye's voice suddenly sounded in the headset. "Old game," Natasha complained lightly. "I think it's good, but it needs to be a bit of a hit," Merlin suddenly said with great interest. Before they could answer, he continued, "I can record the people you kill in real time here, and the final champion can get." Merlin pondered for a moment, and everyone became interested when they heard about the lottery, so no one interrupted. 1. Buckingham Flame. The Buckingham Flame is a fighter based on the A-28B fighter jet. It is equipped with an airborne machine gun and a burst of guided missiles, and can be equipped with anti-brake jamming foils and jamming bombs. The biggest feature is one word: fast. With his superb driving skills, even Tiansha is a head shorter. The headset suddenly became quiet, as if he didn't expect Merlin to be so courageous and turn into a fighter when he made a move. "Oh, guys, I'm already moved." Natasha's voice sounded in the headset, speaking everyone's thoughts. "A fighter plane is regarded as a lottery. I have to say that this mission has become more interesting. Who can say no to such a big toy?" However, some people were wondering where Merlin would get the fighter planes from, but the other party could get armed helicopters equipped with stealth technology, and Kwangyan was no problem. Of course, there is one more thing to add. If Tony Stark is rescued, it will be counted as 10 heads. In the base, there are nearly 100 members of the 10 Commandments gang, and one Stark can directly get more than 1/10. In the case that everyone has similar abilities, this can be a good distance. Whoever wants to participate, deduct 1. 1. Everyone's voices sounded in the headset one after another. "Okay, guys, good luck to you." While several people were talking, Natasha and the others had already approached the ground and opened the parachute. After cutting off the parachute, they quickly arrived at the hills surrounding the 10 Commandments gang camp. Looking at the guards and lights patrolling the camp, they were already eager to try. Erica disappeared from the spot at some point. Natasha and the others were not in a hurry and waited quietly. Nadal, the leader of the 10 Commandments gang, was sitting in the surveillance room, eating dry food and watching the situation on the surveillance screen. Tony Stark just squinted for a while at night, and now he is striking the iron with his hammer, and Ethan next to him is also constantly striking. The deputy who had just changed shifts couldn't help but praise the other party's diligence. However, Nadal looked at the various parts that were built in the picture, and gradually realized something was wrong. These seemed to be a bunch of armor parts. He stood up, looked closely at the surveillance screen, and said uncertainly. Soon, a conspicuous helmet came into his sight, and as each part was put together by Tony Stark, a set of simple silver armor appeared in the cave. Nadal still didn't understand that he was being fooled. Fake, he yelled angrily, and immediately got violent, and by the way kicked the deputy who had just fallen asleep next to him. Follow me. We've been tricked. The deputy was still a little confused when he was suddenly awakened, but when he saw the boss leaving, he subconsciously followed him quickly. Shortly after the two left, Erica in red quietly appeared in the monitoring room. Good luck. She came to the computer desk, quickly took out a magnetic circular electromagnetic device and placed it on the computer. A wave of detection fluctuations spread rapidly as the signal amplified. Zzzz. The electric signal rang in the headset, followed by Merlin's words. Action. Tony Stark's situation is very dangerous now, speed up. Merlin looked at the surveillance screen from the computer screen. The camp leader of the Ten Commandments gang was leading a group of men to Stark's direction, Shen Shen said loudly. It's finally time to start. Bullseye grinned excitedly, and rushed out of the mountain bag first. Crack, crack. Both John and the Punisher checked the rifle in their hands by pulling the bolt. Wow woof. Woo woo woo. Piccolo let out a low growl, and the green hair on his body became more vigorous. Come on, Duke. John gave the order, and Piccolo jumped out instantly like a wild beast. The Punishers quickly followed. What's that? A guard in charge of patrol suddenly heard a sound and turned his head subconsciously. Call out. But the next moment, a sharp whistling sound suddenly sounded in his ears, and a batarang had already cut into his throat. Bang bang bang. The two people holding the AK fell to the ground without making a sound. Da 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 da. Suddenly, a burst of intense gunfire rang out, and then the entire camp exploded instantly like an exploding gunpowder keg. Enemy attack. There are enemies. The vigilant guards stopped abruptly, but the camp was already in chaos. The Punishers have already sneaked into the camp like ghosts. 3 o'clock. Number 2, 6 o'clock, the ammunition box. John didn't even look at it, and there was a shuttle in the direction of 3 o'clock. Da da da. A terrorist with an AK just walked out of the corner of the cave, caught the bullet accurately, and fell to the ground with a cloud of blood bursting from his chest. When he passed by, he took a shot in the opponent's head. After entering the narrow space of the cave, he put away the rifle, took out the pistol from his waist, leaned forward slightly, tilted the pistol, and stepped forward cautiously. 1 o'clock on the 1st. In the dim cave dwelling, only the dim lights around it were illuminated, and the sound of rifle fire filled the interior. The moment the voice sounded in the headset, there was an extra figure at the 1 o'clock ramp in front of him. Boom, boom. The distance between the two sides was very close, and the moment the other party raised the gun in a daze, John pulled the trigger without the slightest hesitation. I'm here, corner number 3. Just as he was thinking, an explosion suddenly sounded from the gate. With 2 breasts and 1 head, Watwo shook his head. Stark also looked at the woman in a red dress with 2 forks in surprise. Mozambican shooting method, suitable for close-range shooting. Among these people's performance, Natasha's performance is much weaker. But the next moment, the leader of the Ten Commandments gang suddenly walked in. This kind of one-hit kill, there is no need to shoot in the chest. PFF'd. Suddenly, Nadal's eyes widened, and he looked at his chest in disbelief. Plop. Erica threw the body aside, then looked at Stark. However, from the perspective of uploading technology, this hidden platform should still have some strength. Da da da. Frank nodded to John, then continued in the direction of Tony Stark. Stark is a genius. However, at this moment, an enemy suddenly appeared in front of him and raised his rifle to aim at him. Corner. After the words fell, an AK barrel protruded from the corner in front of him. The first 2 shots are for control, and the last shot is for finishing. Boom. The smoke and dust filled the air, and the iron gate was rushed open by the huge explosion on the spot. Fake. Blast the door open for me. He quickly shook off the thoughts in his mind, then pointed at the closed iron door and said angrily. Although Natasha is an agent, she has a wide range of specialties, most of which are based on sneaking in to obtain information, and she is still much weaker than those who are good at assassination. This. Stark was silent for a moment. Well, he really didn't know the bottom line. I'll hold them back. Seeing this, Ethan glanced at the data that was still being transmitted, and a flash of determination flashed in his eyes. Ethan, Stark yelled at the back of the other party, who looked at the death-defying back, trying to save him. The two chests are to disrupt the opponent's rhythm and stabilize one's own rhythm. The success rate of the last shot to the head fatal attack will be greatly improved. The gunshot rang out, and the enemy's head exploded on the spot. The headless body froze for a while and then fell to the ground, revealing Frank, who was holding a spray gun behind him with a stern face. But the other party didn't seem to hear it, and rushed into the smoke without stopping. He chuckled and raised his pistol, aiming it at Stark. Although one of the players who accepted the mission was a Punisher he was more familiar with, it might be a fan of the other party. Is it reliable? I mean, you are looking for someone on a game platform. Ethan was still a little worried. Bullseye and the others are like cold killing weapons, harvesting lives one after another indifferently or crazily. What happened? Nadal, who was kicking the door angrily, stopped in front of the iron door, turned around and heard the dense gunfire outside getting weaker and weaker, feeling bad inside. A short fork pierced his chest at some point. Chase. Duke had been injected with regenerative medicine, so he couldn't die here, so he could just let him make trouble in the cave. Bang bang, bang. In a second, a cloud of blood burst out from the opponent's chest and head. There are still beeps in the headset, which belong to other people. The cave extends in all directions, and all the guards are in a mess. Maybe we can sit down and talk. Don't you want the Jericho missile? I can continue to make it for you. Stark smiled, trying to delay a little time. I have to say that your friend is very admirable, but it's a pity that you paid the price with your life. Nadal held a pistol and looked at Stark in the armor with bright eyes. Stark watched the dark muzzle pointing at himself, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. As soon as John grabbed the mop and lifted it, he took out his pistol and shot the enemy in the head. The equipment on your body is very good. Therefore, in the team, she killed the least amount of people. Nadal looked at the back of the deputy's disappearance. For some reason, he had a strong premonition that the other party might not come back. Are you the player who took the quest? He asked uncertainly. It looks like my rescue is here. Stark stood in the armor like an iron barrel, and happily said to Ethan, who was transmitting data next to him. Hurry up, I'll take someone to take a look. The deputy at the side waved his hand and immediately led the two people away from the scene. He didn't participate in the pursuit, but stayed, just to take a look at Stark's newly researched weapon in the cave. Erica, John, and Bullseye are all killers, and Frank is also a humanoid weapon in the ceiling of individual combat. Intensive gunshots continued to come in from outside, and Stark inside the armor could only pray that the progress of data transmission would be faster. Boom! There was a huge roar, and a thick smoke rose, the whole cave trembled, and countless gravels fell. Mission accomplished, she nodded her headset and said. After saying that, he rushed out holding a gun. After he finished speaking, he backed up quickly, and the other two men put sticky bombs on the iron gate, and then quickly backed up to a corner to hide. Wow, woof, woof. The free dog Duke came to John's side with his mouth full of blood, and the gunshot wound on his body recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was originally intended to prevent the two of Stark from escaping, but now it has become their last line of defense. John touched its head, then raised his pistol and continued forward. However, she obviously had a goal long ago. After entering the cave and solving some enemies on the way, she went straight to where Tony Stark was. However, Nadal looked at the data cable connected next to him, and obviously didn't accept this trick. Boom! Erica nodded with a cold face, and was about to speak, but the other party suddenly raised a thick armored arm. Crack! A missile shot out, galloping towards her. Erica's face changed, and she subconsciously turned her head to avoid it. Boom! The missile exploded in midair behind Erica, and the scorching air wave directly drove her away. A sharp whistling sound sounded at the same time. Bang! A batarang was inserted into the surrounding stone wall under the impact of chaos. Erica resisted the burning pain behind her, gritted her teeth and looked at the exit behind her. The bullseye with a target on his forehead was looking at her with a cold expression, and a playing card appeared between his fingers as if by magic. If it weren't for Tony's missile, Erica might have been hit by the bat dart. Hey, don't move, baldhead. Tony had put on his helmet and stepped off the stage at some point, pointing at the bullseye with his arms raised, and the missile inside was ready to go. Bullseye didn't pay attention to him. He still looked at Erica and warned, "He is mine." I arrived first. Erica wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth, got up and flicked her forks, and stared back unwillingly. Although she doesn't care much about tasks, it's not her usual practice to throw away the fruits she gets. At this time, Merlin's voice also sounded in the headset. "Bullseye, pay attention to the rules of the game." Bullseye twisted his neck and laughed ferociously, "Just kill the person." "What are you talking about? Do you know each other?" Stark in the rear watched them talking, suddenly a little confused. However, both Erica and Bullseye regarded him as an NPC and did not respond. Whoops. Erica took the lead and threw a short fork out with one hand, shooting towards Bullseye at extremely high speed like a sharp sword. I also suddenly burst into flames and turned into a red phantom and rushed over. Now that we know Bullseye's abilities, melee combat is of course the best choice. Facing the incoming short fork, Bullseye, who has powerful dynamic vision, just tilted his head slightly, and grabbed the short fork in his hand. Looking at Erica who was rushing towards her, he smiled mockingly. "Return it to you." The short fork returned it at a faster and trickier speed. Erica immediately rolled over in the air, trying to take over her short fork while inverting. However, just when her body was turned upside down in the air, and she was about to grab the steel fork, a dart came after her and hit the short fork instantly. Snapped. PFF'd. With a burst of sparks flying, the short fork immediately deflected under the impact of the dart, and was directly inserted into Erica's palm. "Good guy, Uchiha threw it." Merlin couldn't help being surprised when he saw this scene through the surveillance screen. After Erica's palm was pierced and dragged by the impact, her body lost balance and she was thrown to the ground in a weird posture. She quickly got up and moved behind a rock. Looking at the pierced palm, she held back the pain and pulled out the handle of the short fork in one breath. Blood splattered everywhere. She just quickly tore off a piece of cloth from the red dress on her body and wrapped it around her hands. Her eyes revealed a fierce look. It really hurts, it's too ruthless." Seeing how ruthless this red-haired killer was, Stark couldn't help but gasp. At this moment, he could see that these two people should be the players who received the mission to rescue them, but now it seems that it is because of his own reasons that the uneven distribution of spoils caused conflicts. After thinking about this, he stood aside and ate the melon calmly. Judging from the battle, it was obvious that the female killer in red was much weaker. Hoo. The short fork turned a few times in Erica's hand, and then it was firmly clenched, her back pressed against the rock, and she waited nervously with her face tested. Bullseye looked at Erica who was hiding, shook his hand, and 3 darts appeared in his hand, and then walked over cautiously. In the killing just now, the darts in his hand were almost consumed, and now he only has 3 darts left, and there is a magic card. Bullseye was getting closer and closer to Erica. At this moment, there was a sudden sound of footsteps at the exit. "Stop it. If you have any grudges, let's talk about it after we get out." At the exit, Natasha raised her pistol and aimed at the bullseye. Bullseye turned his head away when he heard the sound, and was about to speak when a gust of wind suddenly came from his ear. It was Erica who took this opportunity to make a move. The sharp short fork slashed across the throat, bringing up a drop of blood, but stopped suddenly halfway. Bullseye didn't care about the wound on his throat and held the opponent's arm firmly. As he spoke, the dart at his fingertips slid across Erica's wrist, and the short fork in the other's painful hand fell off. PFF'd. In the blink of an eye, the falling short fork was caught by Bullseye and pierced Erica's chest. "To tell you the truth, I've seen you upset for a long time." Bullseye approached Erica, looked into the eyes of Erica who was gradually losing his mind, and said faintly. Erica felt the life passing away from her body, and stared at him unwillingly. Bang! A loud gunshot suddenly sounded in the cave, and Bullseye, who had just been mad and arrogant, widened his eyes in disbelief, and then fell to the ground unwillingly. Frank was standing next to Natasha with a cigarette in his mouth, and the nozzle in his hand was still smoking. For such evil people, don't hesitate even as a temporary teammate. He exhaled smoke and said to Natasha next to him. Wow, woof woof. With a bark of dogs, John and Duke also arrived at the scene with a person. At some point, the intensive gunshots outside disappeared and became silent, and the faint smell of blood floated inside the cave. When Stark came back to his senses, he showed a surprised expression when he saw the people who came in with John. Ethan, who had some thinning hair, carefully hid next to John, for fear that the big green-haired dog next to him would eat him. Although the dog had just saved him, it almost bit him. If the owner hadn't arrived in time to stop him, he would have been eaten. Don't worry, he won't eat people, John explained helplessly. After the mutation, he clearly warned his dog not to eat humans. Wow, woof woof. Duke also wagged his tail cheerfully at Ethan. Ethan, looking at the lion-like Duke and his cold pupils, he would believe that he could swallow people alive. Are you all players who accepted the mission? Stark, who was wearing armor, asked warily as he looked at the people entering one by one and the ferocious green-haired dog. Yes, we are here to save you this time. Is this person your companion? Frank put away his gun, said he had no ill intentions, and pointed at Ethan and asked. Well, thank you. After Natasha took out her ID, Stark let go of her guard. It was mainly the matter of Bullseye and Erica that made him feel that this group of players was a bit unreliable. I remember that there were 6 people who took the task, there should be one more. He's in heaven. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.